You are watching the Pan-African Daily TV with Dr. Susan Tata. The Africa we want: unity, consciousness, our culture, our spirituality, our history. One Africa for Africans worldwide. Motherland's calling its diaspora home. Join my voice. Join my team. Join my campaign. Campaign 21 hashtag 1 million subscribers on the Pan-African Daily TV YouTube. Be a volunteer. Apply now. Be the new Africa. So greetings. I can see you joining the live. So we're waiting for Professor James Small. Just hanging right here. He'll be right here with us. Can you hear me? Can you see me? Okay. Wow. All right. So give me a second. I'll be checking on Prof. Okay. Si on veut se développer dans l'unité, si on ne veut plus que nos destins se décident en Occident, il est temps de protéger nos leaders, de marcher ensemble d'une seule voix, comme un seul homme. Trop c'est trop, African people. No more tears, no more chains. The time is now to rise, to stand, to defend our leaders. On a perdu Sankara, on a perdu Lumumba, on a perdu Kadhafi, et tant d'autres encore, mais maintenant, on a Laurent Gbagbo, on a Assimi Goïta, on a Ibrahim Traoré, on a Abdourahmane Tiani. Alors nous laisser l'Occident nous les prendre. Moi je dis non, non, non. L'Afrique, levons-nous comme un seul. We lost Sankara, we lost Lumumba, we lost Gaddafi, now we stand. We have Gbagbo, we have Goïta, we have Traoré, we have Tiani. Africa is J'ai le cœur qui saigne. Trop de trop, protégeons nos leaders. Peuple d'Afrique, assez de larmes, assez de sang. Il est temps de protéger nos leaders, de marcher ensemble d'une seule voix comme un seul homme. Ils ont tué Kadhafi sous prétexte qu'il était dictateur, mais aujourd'hui, dites-moi, que devient la Libye? Hein? Dites-moi que l'Occident nous laisse nos leaders. Trop, c'est trop, la coupe est pleine. Ils veulent briser nos voies, voler nos rêves, voler nos richesses, éteindre nos étoiles, mais la jeunesse s'éveille. Le feu brûle dans nos veines. They try to silence the truth, to change the future of our youth. But Africa is rising, our spirit will never die. Résistance, résistance, le réveil c'est maintenant. Protégeons les maintenant. Résistance, 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 résistance. Résistance. Si on ne veut plus voir nos enfants être appelés immigrés, si on ne veut plus voir nos enfants mourir dans l'océan, si on ne veut plus voir nos enfants vendus comme esclaves, alors protégeons nos leaders. On a perdu Sankara, on a perdu Sankara, on a perdu Lumumba. Thank you, Johnny. Thank you. I know you're already in the place. Can you hear me, Johnny? Can you hear me? C'est maintenant, pas demain, non, pas
So we're waiting on Professor James Small to join us on this conversation. And our topic for today is it's not a topic, it's a message as we posted. Professor James Small, who has been, oh wow, he is right there in the place. Yes, Prof is right in the house. So if you were drinking your tea or trying to settle down or find a comfortable seat for your place, he is right here in the chambers. He's right here on Pan African Daily TV live with us. So today we have a very important key message from Professor James Small. As you know, it's been a while that Prof, the scholar, the greatest, has been all around the continent. He's been traveling, he's been teaching. As a matter of fact, he's been sharing this eternal message, be it in New York, be it on the continent, be it, I don't know, every other spaces that you've been following Professor James. He just came out from one of an extraordinary kind of pilgrimage, as I can call it. He's going to share his impressions with us. And today he still has the energy and the power to be with us on Pan African Daily to share what he calls a last, I don't want to call it a last message, but a key message that will lead us to our liberation and our freedom as given unto him, as downloaded unto him. As you know, all our professors, our teachers are sent with messages crafted particularly for you, the Africa that belongs and believes in Africa and the development and the freedom and the liberation of Africa by Africans and through African technology, African knowledge, African science, African culture, African spirituality, Africanizing every part of the journey. So I want to thank you all for joining, and I really want to thank Professor for taking this time out, to be with us in the studio live in this production today. So our topic is going to be divided in two parts: the cultural message that he wants to give to us, why culture is a tool to our liberation, and the spirituality. What is the difference between these two? What has culture got to do with our identity? And how can African spirituality from inner self give us the freedom that we've been seeking or searching for? So thank you. I'm going to bring Prof on stage if he is ready. Oh my God, as cute as usual. Woo! Yes, wonderful, wonderful. Did we plan this again? No, we just did not plan to appear in purple. We just did not. Right. Can you hear me, Professor?
Hi, sister.
Greetings.
Greetings to you. It's very good to be back. I'm still trying to arrange myself.
It is all right. Take your time. Take your time. We're right here for you. We're waiting for you.
And so, well,
take your time, Professor. So you can hear Professor James, our scholar and messenger for tonight. And you see him looking very strong, though he's actually has been around the world where Africans that matter and bringing the message of liberation and the freedom to the African spaces on the continent and in the diaspora. So it's really going to be, thank you, Johnny. Thank you so much. It's going to be a message. And really, I want to congratulate and thank all of you that have looked or that took our time to watch this production live, because we're going to reproduce it into 4 episodes. But right now, you that are watching have the privilege and the opportunity to ask questions. So if you have any questions regarding culture as a tool, or how culture can work for you, if you're going to watch this conversation, there are things that you can already jot down for yourself. Like we say, we're not going to be having these privileges off again, because most of the time now we're really running close to being on the fields, or close to be parking, or close to be, in the frontiers, or close to just be out of the space. You know what I mean? So we might not have the opportunity again, or the privilege again, or the space again to always come live, where professors and us will be everybody knows what time it is right now, and everybody knows what they need to do right now. So a lot of people are already, so they already 1 foot in the diaspora and 1 foot on the continent of Africa. Of course, it's not strange and it's not news. It's not a story anymore. It's a reality that Africans are moving to the continent, to motherland. Even Africans on the continent are circulating within motherland. I think you just heard that the East African community, of course, we did hear that long time ago, has already launched the intercontinental passport, where they could trade and move, borderless. We also know about the One Africa passport and all these reforms that we have been teaching, preaching, bringing the message to the platform here. Of course, the time is right now. And a lot of people that were already ready even before. Most people are just like, okay, I'm just waiting for my retirement. I'm just waiting for the last minute. But a lot of people, they are in and out of the continent. So that's why I say, if we have Professor here, it is a one-time privilege that we're going to be having them during these last moments, where people are packing, where people are moving, where people are repatriating, where people are relocating, and so to be live on the show with him, to ask questions, to look at him directly in the face and say, hey, Prof, I'm happy to be to have been a part of this journey and this message. So, Professor, if you're ready, we'll be right here for you. And I want to know where you are connecting and where you're watching from. Oh, thank you so very much. I can see Snovia Indigo. I can also see Queen Cheryl. And photographing is someone, I don't know, John Africa, of course. You've been here since we opened the doors. Okay. S.A. Smith is also here connecting. He said, peace, everyone, and love to all of us. So most of you, I just see your numbers rising, but I cannot see your names. Or if I don't call your name and you want me to give you a shout out to, like I said, this is a lifetime production. Even generations upon generations, we know you were here. They would know your name. They would know the name of your legacies that we've left behind, right? So giving out a shout out on Pan-African Daily TV and being in the presence of Professor James Small, the greatest scholar and teacher and messenger that we're blessed to have in this time and point. Okay. So William Wallace Smith Sr., you're here. I can see you. Thank you. And I think some people are watching and connecting us from our Facebook pages. We're streaming on 2 pages exclusively today. Oh, as a matter of fact, I actually just wanted to stream only on one, on YouTube. All right. But for the number of people that we're following on Facebook who said it will not be possible for them to get to connect on YouTube from the continent and really some other parts out of the continent. That's why I actually give that privilege. I call it a privilege or an opportunity to stream live on Facebook. All right. Okay. So, Prof, are you
Yes,
here? Are you ready?
yes, ma'am.
How are you doing, Professor?
I am sleepy. I've been running all over the world, the African world, for the last couple of months, and my clock is completely off. I can't get to sleep before 4 or 5 in the morning. I'm trying to adjust it, but I'm fine. I'm ready to participate with you in the effort that you've put forward on spirituality. It's not an easy thing. It's not something that, you can't take millions of years and put it in an hour. So, and I want to make sure I've got some noise, and I want to make sure I need to go silence that noise.
All right, it's
Can
okay,
you
Professor.
hear background noise?
I can hear nothing. I don't think the audience is also hearing any
Okay.
noise,
Maybe, okay. I'm probably hearing it.
but
I've got a house full of grandchildren. When you're a grandfather and you got a house full of people, there's always noise everywhere. So, and they have to be informed. So give me 2 minutes to inform these kids that they need to go to another floor or go in the yard, because we're going to work for a couple of hours.
okay. All right.
Put me backstage.
It's okay. That's fine. That's very okay. You heard him with your own ears and with your own eyes. You saw him and the job that at his age as a messenger is still doing in the community. And we know from our African spirituality and our structure in our culture, you are a rich man because of your family and your community. In African science of knowledge, there was nothing like riches that had to do with paper or fiat currency. A rich man, or not rich, because riches even are things that go by, but we're talking about wealth. A wealthy person was a person that has a huge family and has cattle and farms. And you could only find those wealthy people in African villages today. Even I think villages in the diaspora, we don't find them in bigger cities where you have skyscrapers. Everybody who were poor in African villages had to relocate to the cities to work in companies, in fabrics. And that's when our fathers, mothers used to define slavery. The slavery was not the slavery that we had to take our people, the transatlantic slave trade. On the continent of Africa, in the years before, we also had slaves. And these slaves, if you pronounce it in your dialect, like in my dialect, in my language, is called abu. Abu meant a slave. But the slaves were because of tribal war and land and dispute. And so when the other tribes will beat up the others, they will take their lands, they will take their children, they will take all their properties, and they become now the tribe of the others. And so most of them that will flee away when the modernization came and they went to the cities were going to be enslaved, right? We didn't have this kind of punishment, harshness, or something like that. It was just still in that kind of a notion. So people that actually were in the village were the wealthiest people because of their families. I'm just giving us back this little information just to buy time while we're waiting on Professor to put his house in order, just to serve us, just to focus on us, just to concentrate on us. But of course, we did have a couple of question lines that I want to prepare you and the audience, of course, today, what we're going to be talking about in these two sectors. So you can already orientate yourself, and also you can be a part of it to know what topic we're actually talking about and what are the questions that include or that you can learn from it. So like I said, today we're talking about two components, or Professor is going to teach us, or the message that he wants to send us is about knowing your culture and your spirituality, which is the inner self and the freedom of peace, of reconciliation, of healing, of transformation, of success and abundance that we've all been yearning and seeking for. I think Professor is right here. Prof, are you ready? I'm so sorry.
No, ma'am, I'm never ready. That's hard. It's hard to really be ready, but I'm ready to participate.
Wonderful. Good.
I know you're making me the teacher, but the individual is never the teacher. It's us. It's the group that's teaching. Every response, every reaction teaches. I'm going to try to give some information in forms and format that would make sense given our situation in the world. And so I would like to thank everyone who has tuned in and who will tune in, because we're really talking about liberation. We're talking about freedom. We're talking about reconstructing the African personality, the African spiritual and cultural selves, the African intellectual self. You were talking about slavery, and I don't hit my host too hard, but you cannot in any way compare the servitude of indigenous traditional African society to what the Arabs, the Muslims, the Europeans, and the Christian produced as slavery. And much of the time period that you were referencing is a time period after Islam have fought multiple genocides across West Africa and across the Sudan to capture our territories and our people. And they're participating in something as bad or worse than chattel slavery in the Atlantic for 1,500 years before 1492. So see, this thing didn't start just after the Berlin Conference. This war has been upon us since the Greeks and the Romans, the Hittites and the Hyksos, and the Persians invaded our land, starting in Northeast Africa, driving millions of us towards Sudan and Central, what we call the Central Sudan in West Africa. Mm-hmm. And this happens over thousands of years of disruptions and destruction of a people's civilization, the Great Kemetic civilization, the Great Sudanic civilization, the Great Zimbabwe civilization, the Great Kiliwa Swahili civilization. All of these are pretty much destroyed before the transatlantic slave trade starts. So this war, this colonization didn't just start with the British and the French. They got on board when they saw how sweet it was for the Turks and the Arabs, because you got to look at the Ottoman Empire controlling all of North Africa, much of East Africa down to Sudan, from the 9th century until the First World War in the 20th century. We never discussed the impact of that. What is the impact of that? There is a man, they used to call him Shehu, in the Sudanic West Africa, Nigeria, Cameroon area. And he was glorified for the great Fulani jihads. What is the Fulani jihad? That was not a picnic, that's war. War against the indigenous structures of West Africa was broken down even before the Portuguese could get there. By 1,500 years of war and enslavement and genocide and colonization by the Turkish and the Arabs and the Islamic forces in Africa. And they're still in Africa today. We are still wearing their identity till today. So you can't really have a discussion without taking that history into account, because history erases the mystery. It sounds like a cliche, but if you don't know history, you're not going to understand spiritual discussions. It's not going to make any sense. So if you want to really, truly understand spiritual discussions, you've got to begin to study the history of our people for a couple of thousand years. Because this wasn't one defeat at the hand of the British, French, or Portuguese 500 years ago that has put us in the situation, or 100 years ago with the re-invasion of the continent after the Berlin Conference. This thing has been this war against our culture, this war against our civilizations, this war against our people's stability, this conquering and imposing your philosophy and your ideology as religion on us by the sword and then by the gun has been going on for a couple of thousand years. And the impact is enormous. Because most of us who are Muslim in Africa and even here, we think that is a legitimate African system of understanding reality. It is not. We have tried to make it that as much as we can. But that is a religion and a system of understanding and a philosophy that is foreign and alien to African peoples, that was imposed upon African people by war. People say, oh, Islam spread simply, oh, it was about trade, religion. Tell the dead ancestors who speak to me that's what it was about. Study all the jihads across West Africa before the Berlin Conference. Tell me that's what it was about. What was the dispute in Sudan with Muhammad Ahmed? This is pre-Berlin Conference. And the so-called Egyptians and their British allies who would invade Sudan and slaughter our people and murder our leaders to get control of the Nile River for the purpose of trade down into inner Africa so they could steal our raw materials and get it quickly back to the Mediterranean. Let's have a real discussion, because spirituality is an involvement in a grasping and a living in your mind and body of your reality.
Mm-hmm.
It isn't something you can separate and say, oh, I'm here, Professor James Small, and I'm an intellectual, if or any of that. And I can read and write and speak this language. And then on the other side of it is my spirituality. No, there's no separation.
Professor, can you position your camera a little bit on your head? Because I really literally see you in the studio, just like I can't even get your mouth.
I need to go up.
Oh, just go up a little bit. Again, just
better?
a little bit.
A little bit more.
I see you just like from here. I don't know. Thank you. That would be good. Thank you so very much.
All right. I don't know how to. I have to turn this off. And deal with the technology, but I've overdone it. I've hooked up all my phones and my computers to one another and trying to be more efficient.
Okay.
So
congratulations. Yeah.
So this is the best I can do because I've got a bigger screen, right? And I can't.
It's good.
Lower.
Yes.
I
mean, in the beginning it was okay, but you keep going. I don't know what was.
Oh, okay.
Now it's much better.
It's better.
Thank you. I'm sorry. Okay. So go ahead. Yeah.
That was the weight of what we're doing.
I do agree.
And I know, my brothers and sisters who are Muslims and my brothers and sisters who are Christians think when we try to talk about rebirthing African consciousness and rebirthing African culture, that it is an attack on them. And I would wish that your heart would understand more deeply, this is not an attack on any African man or woman or child who happens to be practicing the religion and the culture of our enemy. That means that you have been captured mentally, psychologically, physically, and spiritually by someone else's world view, how the world is seen. And in that worldview, you're the minimalist. You're at the bottom of the pile. No matter how religious you are, no matter how well you speak their language, no matter which one of the universities you study at and get a degree, you're less than them in that culture, in that value system. And we're constantly fighting to prove we're equal and don't understand how silly that is. Why would a colonized people fight to be equal to the colonist who's a murderer and a thief and a rapist and a robber? To see that someone could make you do that with your mind and says, oh, I am not the precious thing that was murdered and robbed. I want to be equal to the murderer and the robber. I know this is coarse, Susan, but the truth is the only light. To get truth, to get clarity in the minds of people. to see what colonialism and slavery have done to our minds, to our culture, our society. Even me, I started to speak a little fragments of a couple of languages, of Yoruba and of the Twi. But I don't know the language well enough to be worthy enough to even teach what I'm trying to teach. But I'm doing it because we have no choice. We have no choice. Because the language, our indigenous language, is the foundational key for our freedom. Let me say that one again. Our indigenous languages are the foundational key for our freedom, our spiritual freedom, our intellectual freedom, our psychological freedom, our cultural freedom. Because it is in the language that our ancestors have planted the historical understanding of cosmology and ecology that they inherited from the beginning of time. It is that language that lets you understand and feel what they meant when they said freedom. They didn't mean the same thing that the Frenchman means, or that the Belgian man means, or that the Englishman means. That's not what they were talking about. Someone came into our land, and for greed and ignorance and barbarity, they could have come and said, let's sit down and negotiate. You have something I want. What do I have that you want that I could exchange for what I want? But instead, they didn't come that way. They came into our land with swords and horses and spears and arrows, and then later with guns to take what they want that we had. And that involved taking our people, and then later taking our very minds, destroying our language, destroying our family structure, destroying our sense of self, destroying our understanding of nature, destroying our understanding of cosmology, and replacing it with their religion and their philosophy, which was based on the slaughter. It produces them to slaughter the innocent in the first place, and now we're going to become the minds that slaughter the innocents. That's what we're fighting to be equal to. You know how silly that sounds?
Absolutely.
Absolutely silly. But yet, their mind, their language, their philosophy, their understanding that they call religion of divinity has prepared us for self-destruction and self-management into slavery, even without their physical presence. We manage and enslave ourselves on their behalf because their language is a slave manager. Their philosophy is a slave manager. Their psychology is a slave manager for anybody who adopts it when it's not theirs. I hope people understand that, because I don't want to deal with what people are now interpreting or turning into what I call feel-good spirituality. Spirituality don't feel good when you're enslaved, okay? Spirituality is scary because it tells you you have to fight your enslavement. You have to fight your mental enslavement. You have to fight your spiritual enslavement. You have to fight your physical enslavement. And most people don't want to undertake that task because it hurts. But we have to start at the beginning. Spirituality is our reality. Our ancestors live eternally. There isn't a single, and I've studied African languages. I've done the philology, and I've done, trying to understand words. And the one thing I understood, there isn't a single African culture before our enslavement by other cultures that had a concept of death as the end of life. Not one.
Yeah.
We have no word for it. Because in our African understanding of reality, which we are calling spirituality, or our fashion sacred science. We knew everything was eternal. There is no beginning. There isn't a philosophy or history in the world that can point to a beginning of anything. And certainly, when you look at our cultures, and I'm looking at Igbo and Yoruba, I'm looking at Congo, I'm reading Banseki Fukiai and his, looking at spirituality in the Bantu Congo. I'm reading Asa Hilliard. I'm reading our brother from Nigeria talking about rebirthing of African consciousness. I'm reading Dr. Noble's The Island of Meme. And these are people trying to tell us that we exist as a being in nature, as distinct as, let's say, a baobab tree. That tree is distinct. It has its own identity. It has its own function. It has its own evolution. And we, the African race, have allowed, through defeat, we fought a major war. We're still in a war. We've allowed for ourselves to be cloned by our invaders and defeaters. They have cloned us into a poor rendition, a poor hologram of a bad copy of themselves. A poor hologram. You know how bad that is? Of a bad copy of themselves. And we come back home. I'm so happy to see you with your beautiful African necklace. And I'm happy to see you with your beautiful African hairdo. But even I'm fighting my grandchildren, they got all this hair that's still in there that hangs down their back. And I asked one of my 15-year-old baby, why did you do that? Because I took her to Africa this summer with me for her first trip. But the deal was, you got to get the extensions out of your hair to enter Africa. You will not enter Africa with extensions. Even I know people over there use extensions just like you do here. You're going home to Africa with your natural hair in a natural state to greet your ancestors. And for them spiritually to greet you, you must go this way. So I took two of them. One was 18, one was 15. And it was rough. Couldn't get them up in the morning. They were so locked into the death functioning of so-called false Western civilization that they could not function when they got in Africa. It took a week, half of the trip, to get them to realize, I'm in Africa with Grandpa. I'm in Ghana. I'm in Kemet. I'm with my people. I'm with the people I hear talk about, the people in the book. I'm on the land that they say we came from. It took those babies a week just to begin, and they were so frightened. They were sleeping every day to block out having to grasp Africa, because in their minds, they have been so de-Africanized. Even though they were raised in my house, but they go out my door in the morning at 8 to school, and they come back at 3 or 4 in the evening, having been reprogrammed by the enemy. Because the school system all across Africa have the curricula of the colonialists. Mm. We need to all read Things Fall Apart again and again and again. You know that book?
Of course. Things Fall Apart, Chinua Achebe.
Yes. Make sure everybody realize we missed Nchebe's point. Even I had to begin to reread that book this year again, and I'm just truly beginning to understand what this brother understood and was trying to explain to us about how colonialism de-Africanizes us.
Absolutely.
At all levels. He teaches us what cultural genocide is, what spiritual genocide is, what social genocide is. And he showed that when someone takes away your language, you are in big trouble. Even if you still speak your language, but you've made your language a second language to the language of the oppressors. So you have minimalized your language. And in minimalizing your language, you have reduced your ability to hear your ancestry. Because it is in that language is our library. That language is our archive. That language is our encyclopedia that stores the millions and millions and millions of years of experiences that our ancestors had on this planet. Probably billions of years of experiences and memory stored in the very cells in our body, in the very DNA in our bodies. We cannot unlock them because we've given up the key to language. Not just uttering the language in words. Many of us can do that. But knowing grammatically how the language works. Understanding the etymology of every word in our language when we speak it. What have the ancestors left us as a tool to understand how I'm related to you? There you are, way over there, looking just as beautiful as heaven, I must say. And I'm way here in America, but I'm as connected to you as your arm is to your torso. There is no real separation of me and you, according to our understanding, our ancestors' understanding of what we call spirituality. We are, in this time, trying to understand how to reclaim ourselves. Our young people are coming back from Britain, from France, from Italy, from Germany. Our diasporans are coming from the Caribbean and coming from the United States and other places where they've dumped us around the world over the centuries. But we're coming back as the white man. We're coming back as the Eurasian and the European. We're not coming back as Africans. We must realize there must be a decolonization of consciousness. There must be an effort to rebirth African consciousness. And that effort to rebirth African consciousness must start with learning an African language. Then it has to start with understanding the cultural fabric of any given African society. Why is this festival here? Why is this ritual here? Why is this shrine here? Why is this dance here? Why is this drum rhythm here? What is it that our ancestors have left for us? We set them aside like they're little bits and pieces of toys. The drum is just a drum. We have no understanding of why the tool was created and how it should be used to integrate into the rest of our being. Why that particular dance the Ewe doing? Why is that dance the Salenke is doing? Why is that dance the Cameroonian in the South is doing versus the dance that the Cameroonian in the North is doing? What is the message in the dance? What is the story told? What are they trying to say to us? We talk about God, and then we push it somewhere up in the sky. And even when we said we go back to our religion, we got people saying, oh, Africans have many gods. Even ISIS said, oh, we have multiple gods. No, we don't. I've studied now, and I haven't seen a single African language that deals with multiple gods. Not one. Yeah, so study. Not a single one. We understood and expressed in all of our being, our language, our society, that there is only one organism that exists that we refer to as the divine, and we exist as a part of that organism.
Yes.
You know, our culture is very clear. It tells us that what is called science is just a part of our sacred science system. And what the West have done, they've taken aspect of the system that's called science that deals with the physical realm, and they move that over here. Then they take the things that deal with the spiritual, the inner self, and with cosmology, and they move that into a thing called religion, which has no connections. And we dance and sing and shout in these religions and walk out into the poverty and the filth that we walked into the church with on a Sunday morning. And not a darn thing has changed, because it isn't a system of change. Religion is not a system based on changing your spiritual dynamics. Matter of fact, it's a system to keep you in check. It is a slave tool. It is a tool to keep you managed by others. It takes away your personal relationship with the rest of the universe. And now your connection to the universe is through mythical characters that always looks like your enemies. They're your gods, they're your saints, they're your this. And yet they never deliver freedom for you. They did not get rid of colonialism. They did not get rid of the people who dumped their radiation poison off of our shore. They do not get rid of the barges of American garbage, which is dumped off of the shore of Cote d'Ivoire and other cities. They did not get rid of the South Korean fishing boats that come and vacuum up our fishing. So where we used to get a red snapper 2 feet long, we now get a red snapper 2 inches long. That the fish that we catch to feed our people, to provide the protein that we share across the country, is not there because someone else is there, is harvesting it. Did that God you pray to send those boats back to Asia where they belong? No. Did it give you your money, your worth of your gold or your diamonds or your cobalt or your coltan or your manganese? No. So what the hell good is it to have a religion, to have a system of worship where you're supposed to be speaking to the divine, who's supposed to protect you and guide you, and it solves none of your problems? You wake up every morning dreaming of how to get your son or your daughter out of your village, out of your country, into the foreign country, to learn the foreign ways, to earn money, to bring back home just so you can eat, when you're sitting on the largest repository of wealth on the planet Earth. So let's be real serious. Spirituality is not about feeling good and having a good old time like religion got you doing. I'm glad this is Sunday. Y'all need to get your butts up out of those religious spaces and get into a real spaces. I would love to see it, brother King Hercules, because mathematics is one of the essential tools that Africans created to explain spirituality. And when we talk about our relationship to divinity, it can only best be described if you're willing to do the readings in quantum physics that is required to understand it. A good book that lets you see the earliest relationship between what we call today quantum physics and an understanding of cosmology and ecology is called the Pyramid Text in ancient Kemet. The Pyramid Text, which precedes the book of the Coming Forth by Day, it precedes the Book of the Dead, it precedes the Bible, it precedes the Torah, it precedes the Quran, and it gives an explanation of how things came to be. I think I've recited it a few times, one of the passages where Amun realized that when I realize I exist, existence exists, you know? And he says, when I realized I existed in existence, Ma'at, the feminine principle of the universe, truth, justice, righteousness, harmony, and balance was at my side. And I cough up Shu, meaning the gases and the things and that we call outer space, and spat out Tefnut, you know, which are the elements and the minerals. And they came together in a marriage that created everything we see in the sky called Nut, and everything we see on earth called Geb, which is made up of all of the things that are in the sky. Most people forget we live on the planet Earth. Planet Earth is an how do you say? It's a spacecraft. It's in outer space, just like Jupiter, Mars, and Pluto. In the same way we see Saturn and Jupiter and Uranus in space, so are we on Earth in that same space. And we are orbiting thousands and thousands of miles per hour around this ball of fire we call the sun, that star. At the same time, we're spinning on our own axis thousands of miles an hour, and we feel none of it. Further than that, the sun that is pulling us with its gravitational pull is sailing tens of thousands of miles, almost the speed of light, through the Milky Way, and we're sailing with it and don't even realize it anymore. But our ancestors realized this. That's why you can go and study the Dogon culture, and they can talk about stars that no one was able to see except with telescopes a few years ago. How did they know outer space? Because they understood that I am a part of that. I am not separate from the rest of the things in space. You know, I remember I had to go through an initiation, and you get something that people refer to as possess. And you dance, and I couldn't dance with it now, but I danced then. And I went to places that was beyond this world. And I saw ancestors by the thousands in another place of all kinds of different cultures. And I realized that the energy and matter that makes me up is not as solid as I think, because it can be dissolved in a moment. And so when we look at our systems, like the Yoruba one, which I'm a part of, they have a word called Imo, and it means knowledge. And in their meaning of knowledge, it means the raw information, facts, and skills acquired through study or experiences. You know, knowing that, for instance, that fire produces heat. So that's an example of what we consider to be knowledge. So we say Imo. And then we call Oye, understanding. And the meaning of understanding in the Yoruba tradition is the ability to interpret, comprehend, and explain why and how things work. Okay. And that's a why, that's a how. And a good example of that is understanding the scientific process behind fire and how it creates heat. And then the third one is Ogbon, wisdom, meaning the quality of having good judgment and insight, which allows for the skillful application of knowledge and understanding to make such decisions. You know, the good answer to that is how to best use knowledge and understanding. Those three things are basic to African spiritual understanding. Spirituality wasn't some mystical something hidden behind a cloth in a hut that you couldn't see making noise. Spirituality was understanding your reality and applying that understanding to how you lived your life in that reality. Spirituality will give you the tools to destroy the colonialism of your mind. Spirituality will give you the tools to destroy cultural genocide. See? And so we have to really relocate spirituality in our mind. How do we really see this thing that we're calling spirituality? We have to redefine it. It is not in an African religion. Because Africans didn't have religions. We didn't need religion because religion, the very word means to bind back. That means you've broken away from something and you got to bind yourself back to the thing. No, we were the thing. Our ancestors were the thing. They understood themselves as the thing being the totality of being, the totality of everything as one. And us being a part of that totality with an understanding of what it meant to be a part of that totality. And so we imitated it socially with the way we construct families and the way we raise children. We raise children according to the way the universe raised children. You know, we construct the family to be representative of our understanding of how the universe is constructed. Our family was constructed in relationship to how the cells in our body is constructed to create a relationship to form this seeming mass that you're looking at called me. But every one of those cells in my body has a separate being, you know, but they've agreed to work together to make me. If they have an argument, I disappear. If my cells decide, well, I'm going to move away an immeasurable space because I'm angry with the cell of this group here, then I disappear. I only exist because there's a working relationship based on the principles of unity, which today we call Ubuntu and Pan-Africanism without understanding what we're saying. Mm-hmm. But our bodies is the perfect universe. Our ancestors understood that. And so when they built the village is designed, they didn't just build a hut here and a house here and a corral for cattle or sheep there. There was a specific place in the compound for everything. Where the food is prepared, where the guest is greeted, where the guest is entertained before they can come to any other part of the house, where the animal is safely kept. Everything was organized based on an understanding on how the universe is organized. Mm. And it all depends on harmony that came from a unity that was based on mutual respect of all things for all things. Mm. And they look at our culture. How you come into a culture and the people are peaceful and they're living with a relationship to the earth where you don't even cut down a tree, your brother or sister, for use unless you have a conversation letting them understand why you're doing it and beg them for forgiveness that you even have to do it. Just the vibration of your words into the ether around you is heard and understood by that tree. We can speak to water and change the molecular content of a glass of water. We do it, we just don't know what we're doing. Mm. Okay. So we don't understand spirituality. That's why I'm spending all this time going over this. Spirituality is not religion. Okay. At best, one could say religion could have been an attempt to create a tool to teach spirituality, but its history would prove that to be a bad definition. And I used to say that, but then I realized, no, it's history proof. It did not even attempt to teach spirituality. It attempted to enslave you so that you did not understand spirituality. Spirituality is your relationship to the rest of the universe via the chain of your ancestors. And you've heard me say this before. My mother and father, when they gave birth to me, who did they give birth to? They gave birth to themselves. My grandparents, when they gave birth to my parents, who did they give birth to? They gave birth to themselves. Who am I? I am all of them. Now let's go back millions of years. I am all of the millions and millions and millions of my ancestors compiled into one complex organism of vibration and rhythm and electricity and heat and energy in an organized fashion. What our culture was our educational system to keep us organized in our reality.
Correct.
You know, and so they've colonized our culture, trampled upon it, and got us trampling upon it. If you watch TV shows and even on this TikTok thing, every day I'm trying to figure out how to get to it to stop it. There's an attack on what the African woman, she's always shown as a whore. She's always trying to have sex. And the African man is always trying to rape the African woman. And the African family, there's no loyalty between the wife and the husband when one goes away. And this stuff is shown day in, day out, all day long on TikTok. And we thinking it's entertainment. No, 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 no. It is an attack on your psyche by an enemy that's trying to socialize our children to self-hate their ancestry so they won't look back for liberation. And the only way you're going to liberate is to look back, like the Ghanaian Sankofa, Akan Sankofa. Go back and fetch it. What are you going back to fetch? The wisdom of your ancestors. That's what's going to liberate you. Guns. We tried the guns in Mozambique. We tried the guns in Guinea-Bissau. We tried the guns in Namibia. We tried the guns in Zimbabwe. We were ready to use the guns in South Africa. Now everybody says, oh, we're liberated in all these places. We're as bad off today or worse than we were 50 years ago.
Yes. True.
So that wasn't the path to liberation. There might be a role for guns and doing certain things, but that's not what I'm here to talk about. The path to true liberation is to reclaim your ancestors as you, not philosophically, but actually. I am those people whose pictures you see behind me. Those are my ancestors back there. That pretty one is my mama, right? She's the finest woman I've ever put eyes on. You know, last week was the 24th year that she left that body. You know, I am her. That little girl I took with me to Africa.
Yes.
That's already been traumatized by the negativity of this society. And I didn't take her for entertainment. I was trying to save my baby.
Yes.
You know, I was trying to save my baby. And the only thing I can do is take her home to Africa and pray that the energy, the vibration, the rhythm, the spirit of all those ancestors, when she walked into the slave dungeons, would set upon her. When she walked into the village and those women hug her and welcome her, was set upon her. And it did. By the time we had gotten through Ghana and got to Kemet, I saw a different child. In less than 10 days. And I didn't spend a lot of time with her teaching her this and this. I decided to let them be on their own with the rest of the people. Let them find their way. My job was to get them up in the morning, make sure they got on the bus and go to whatever site or village we were visiting. And I saw when the child began to see that there's something different, that somebody have lied to me. When last year, now she still came back and she put a little hair on, but I said, don't be too hard. It's a slow walk. But I remember last year when my daughter came to me and said, Daddy, my baby says she's ugly, that she's not beautiful. And she's sitting up in the room crying. We were afraid she's going to commit suicide because the world she was in and the things she's getting on social media has launched such an attack on the psyche of African children. If you hate what you see in the mirror, then you hate your ancestors that is in you. So how can you then try to seek salvation and freedom and liberation for these young minds unless we find a methodology that makes sense? And the only methodology I know is to return to language, return to culture, return to history, return to rhythmic patterns and and vibrations of our ancestors. Become our ancestors again. We are our ancestors. Every cell in my body come from that woman who we perceive to be dead over there. And that man is dancing with her in the next picture who we perceive to be dead. How can they be dead when I've got all of their cells living, talking to you?
Correct.
Right? But I need to understand what that relationship is. This is what spirituality is. Let me understand how my mother, how my father, how my auntie, how my uncle, how my grandpeople who are no longer physically with us are still here with us through me, through you, as you. That system of understanding is what we call culture, that use our sound, our dances, our musical instrument, rhythm, patterns, our language especially, to explain cosmology and ecology to us. So we knew why we eat this food. We knew why we ate this food only a certain time of year. We know why we eat a certain time of day. Somebody over time had worked out those patterns. It may be different in Africa, depending on the different environment you're in, but those type of patterns were worked out just to deal with our health. Being healthy is one of the highest forms of spiritual activity. Being healthy is one of the highest forms of spiritual activity, because only a healthy house, a healthy temple, a healthy kingdom will allow for the electrical, for the vibratorial, for the energy, for the rhythm patterns that connect you with the rest of the universe to be perfected. I am here to perfect the divine. I am the divine in miniature. I am the particle of sunlight. Every particle of sunlight, every beam of sunlight contains the totality of the substance of the sun. And that seems so simple. But they've made us, through religion and through cultural genocide, see the world differently, out of fear. Once they made us think this body was more important than everything else around it in the universe, then they frightened you with taking this away and controlled you with fear. This body will dissipate no matter what. You can live to be 90, you can live to be 100, you can live to be 115, but it will dissipate. They can't take nothing away from you. The secret to life is to have no fear. And your only choice in life is freedom, which is to be your ancestors again, to be your culture again, to be your value system again, to be your worldview again, or death. That is to be a clone and an imitator of the thing that's destroying you, which then make you the agent of your own destruction, while he sits back and laughs. Spirituality is simply being fully engaged in your daily reality, with a connection and an understanding through your ancestry that you should never let be broken, ever again, once you reestablish it. It's always established, but to be conscious of it is when you reestablish it. Because the ancestors have never abandoned you. We've abandoned them. You see, the ancestors never abandoned us. We abandon them through the ignorance forced on us through the colonialism and the slavery that make us curse our shrines and call it all kinds of negative words. We see the movies in Africa. We see the nice movies, and then we see the movies that anytime someone is trying to use African culture, there's black smoke puffing up, there's people dying, he's using it to hurt people. That's silliness. If we had that kind of power, would we not doing it that way? Would we not have driven the enemy out of our land a long time ago? If I could just take a stick and stomp the ground, and all of the French troops would leave Chad tomorrow, I would be stomping the ground all day. But that's not how reality works in the African framework of understanding. It is having knowledge of your ancestors' way. They were making a better world for us. We must take what they gave us as a tool and make the better world for the future. But you cannot go forward if you are adopting the worldview, the belief practices, and the culture of the one who murdered your mother and your father, because then you will continue to murder your mother and your father. That's the simplest way. I know it sounds crude for me to put it, but that's the simplest way to put it. Susan Tata, I look at your face, and you're just this beautiful African woman, but in you, I see your mother. I see your grandmother. I see your auntie. Those ones who are gone, they're all living in you. That's why you do what you do. That's them. You're the new temple. You're the new house. You're their new personality, but it's them. They have always been here. And we, in each generation, we expand ourselves. What the enemy has done by forcing us to accept his way, we're expanding his ancestors while we are deflating our ancestors.
Sure.
Our ancestors, I am my ancestor. They were me yesteryear. My children will be me tomorrow. My grandchildren will be me tomorrow. I will never die. Impossible. That little girl who was with me in Kemet, who come racing back down the pyramid and go, Grandpa, Grandpa, I went to the top, and I stood by the tomb of the king. She had never read a book on that tomb before. She had never been in, she didn't know what the pyramid really was, other than that there's a pyramid in Africa. You know, but something happened there. And so she went to this place and she stood up over the sarcophagus in the pose of Ma'at. My baby didn't know nothing about no Ma'at. So I asked her, I said, why did you do that? She said, I just felt like doing that. You know? And now she talks to me. Once last year, I pick up from school every day, but she never answered my call. And she may call back 15, 20 minutes. Now she answers the phone every time I call. She was given a necklace by Joshua, and I got to tell Joshua about this beautiful necklace, he said, and she lost it. She cried for 2 days in Ghana. We had the hotel manager interview every staff member. We were trying to find this beautiful necklace from Zimbabwe. But I had another necklace here on the Orishas that have all of the colors. So she wears that now under her clothes. Because she noticed something to trying to reconnect back to Africa.
Yes.
You know. And she just turned 16 last week. And so the colors she chose for herself was red and black. I said, oh, why did she choose those colors? She said, Grandpa, I don't know. I just like red and black. And I says, you know, the priest, when your mother was told she could never have children, and Nana Afuasa came from Ghana and blessed your mother. And 10 months later, you came. And your mother didn't know you were pregnant until she was 6 months. Right? And I says, and when we first asked you, when you started to speak, where are you from? That little baby said, I'm from Ghana. And she would choose red and black. Two of the most sacred colors in the Akan tradition. And those were her balloons, and that's where she took a picture. And her cake was covered in leopards, as a leopard skin. Something happened on that trip for my baby. And I have to just keep enforcing that something. So I give her different books to read, smaller, shorter books, and trying to expand her knowledge of our culture. And I'm trying down to, I've got the tapes for them to try to learn Tree. So they can say, Mimiwachi. And, you know, Mimiwachi. So they can begin to, you know, I'm just trying to learn the language, and you have to get the courage to speak it when you go into the culture, whether you think you are doing it well or not. And then the people will help you get to do it well, to pronounce it right. And so I'm trying to teach them all the language. So now I'm gathering every Sunday in my basement, all the grandchildren that surround me, because I cannot let the world have them. When I saw how far those two little ones were away, and they wanted to find a way, but they didn't know a way, even though Grandpa's been talking. Grandpa's been so minimalized in the family, even. You know, it says the prophet is never so unwelcome except in his own village. And now the family members have gone this way, gone that way. So the children looking at, well, Grandpa may be sounding good, but I'm scared to identify with Grandpa, right? And when they get older, I start getting the calls. You know, I start getting the calls when they go to college. And I say, Grandpa, this, Grandpa. And then I have to say, okay, then this is the opportunity to teach. Then I take this opportunity to reintroduce them to giving rebirth to the African consciousness that's always been there laying dormant, you know. And so we have to all realize Africa can't die. The ancestors can't die. They're asleep because we don't realize their presence. When we realize their presence and take it to a higher level, not just realizing they're present, but that they're present as me. My ancestors are present as me. I am them. That's not a belief. And you cannot scientifically disprove that. Bring all your physics, whatever you want, all will enforce what I just said. You know. And so we must return to understand our history. We must return to not just going to a village and say, no, we're going to have some drinks, we're going to have some beer when there's a festival, we're going to dance, we're going to frolic. What is that festival about?
Yes.
Why is this festival a week or 2 days or a day? Why is the festival this time of year? What was the message the ancestors left in that tool? Because that's what the festival is. It is a tool. You enjoy the tool, you celebrate with the tool, but it is a tool, a teaching tool to keep something alive in your memory. Right? To keep something alive in your memory. Because you are them. You're being reminded of who you are in the music, in the dance, in the language, even in the food, you know. The simple, why do you eat with your right hand? That may seem, someone look at us, oh, it's an Islamic thing. No, it's not. We did it before we met them. We did not have then the hygienic tools that we have today, right? So we knew using the hand that you use to clean yourself could put something in your body that will make you sick and can even cost your life. So separate. This hand will be used to deal with body cleansing when necessary. This hand will be used to nourish the body. And we never let the two carry out the same function. Today, we've got a greater knowledge of hygiene, and we got tools, we've got soap, we've got disinfectant, we got all these things we didn't have then at the ready. So we designed something as simple as clean yourself with this hand, feed yourself with this hand, and don't cross them up. That was a heavy scientific medical move. There's all logic support us doing that for the healthiness and the safety of the organism we call the body. And yet we take it for granted. We just do it and, you know, get that good piece of fufu and get it into that fish stew and put it into our mouth and put our hand in the bowl and wash our hands. But we don't think of, why do we do it? Who designed it? How do they understand and see scientifically that this was a scientific decision to better the health of the person? Something as simple as that we take for granted. So we need to return. Someone invaded our land. someone destroyed our institutions. Someone murdered our ancestors. Someone stole our values. They saw a Benin head. It meant nothing to them except I can put this in a place and value it as an aesthetic, and other people will come and pay for it. They did not understand why the African carved that head. Mm-hmm. And who that person was who was carved, and what was the purpose of that carving in terms of rhythm and energy and matter and electricity. All of us have electricity in us, you know. Sometimes we shock ourselves, we touch something and we call it static electricity, but we never explain it. We never explain why I can touch you and shock you. We just take it for granted, static electricity. But yet we are a generating plant of an enormous amount of energy to run all these millions and millions of cells in our body, each of which is an individual organism that has a fundamental relationship with everything around it. And that's the way we are in the universe. So how do we begin to understand that again? How do we begin to understand that we can think? We think people, remember when we were young, someone would say, what is love? And we used to say, love is a feeling that can't be understood. Love is a feeling that better be understood, or we're going to be in trouble. Thinking sex is love. Thinking attraction is love. Thinking dependency is love. Thinking attachment is love. Even think someone brutalizing, like so many men adopting the European way and the value system towards women, then become brutalizers of those very women they say they love. And then the woman get caught up in the syndrome, thinking he only hurts me because he loves me. What thinking allow you to go there? A thinking where your value have been taken away. The value of who you are have been taken away by the very culture, the language, and philosophy you're participating in a daily basis to create your socialization. And your socialization is how you get your values, your interests, and your principles. And so if you have a society whose values, interests, and principle is anti-life, that's why America is the murder capital of the world. We're supposed to be the most developed of all the world, the highest tech of all the world, the wealthiest of all the world, the most powerful in all the world. We kill more of our own people than anybody else in the world does here in America. You know, and we kill more of the world's people than anyone else does. We sent all the bombs to Gaza. We sent those bombs. We sent those jet planes that bomb Iraq and Iran. We sent them. My tax money that they take out of my paycheck and give to the Congress, and they vote legislation to send these things to kill other people around the world. And yet the world have been so deceived that we look at this place as heaven. Everybody wants to get there. Because if you can get to America, you can become wealthy. Yes, you can. But know that that wealth would come from murdering people all around the world and taking what's not ours. And we have legitimized that as being normal by pretending we're simply struggling to fulfill our physical needs with some money and some food and some clothing and some shelter. And so who got killed and who got slaughtered and doesn't matter. So we have become the very thing we say have colonized us. We have become the very thing we say have genocided us. We've become the very thing we say that has enslaved us, that have occupied us. We are not our ancestors. Our ancestors was the one they did all those things to. And if you do not find your way back to understanding and being one with your ancestors, you will never know anything about spirituality.
Correct. Agreed. I agree.
And so it is so beautiful when you find yourself, even at 80 years old, I realize every day how much I do not know, especially about being African, and how much more there is for me to learn, to become my mother again, to become my father again, and to let them know I'm conscious that you are still existing as me.
Yeah.
With your memory of what has occurred to our people, and my obligation to reverse that revolution. I have to revolve it by any means necessary, as Malcolm said, but not to be deluded to think that violence is the primary or the only means, because we have proven it is not. The most primary means is to return to culture via language, to return to an understanding of our spiritual institutions, to return to understanding the rhythmic patterns, even in the way we speak. You can hear an African language, even if you don't understand a single word, you feel it. You feel it, you taste it, you can enjoy it. And you don't even understand exactly what's saying, but you will know it. When I met my teacher, Nana Fuasa, back in 1983, she spoke no English and refused to learn any English. But she and I understood each other. I understood her speaking her ancient Twi, and she understood my English, not in the intellectual or the psychological way. We understood in what we felt.
Spiritual. Yep.
We laughed at each other about things, and others were looking at us like we were crazy. You know, she could see me walking across, she'd come to visit me, she and the children at a hotel, and she'd see me walking across the lobby, and she would just through gestures start speaking, and I could return the gestures speaking to her. She lived to be 101 in that body. So I knew that this African thing is deeper than anything we know, because this African thing is the universe's thing itself. That's what our culture is about. Our culture is about how the universe exists as one and how we fit in that. Our culture is the methodology of that fit. You know, the tools that let us stay in harmony and an understanding of cosmology and its relationship to ecology. You know? So, Brahma, I do get your messages. I know I'm bad about returning texts, but I'll start doing it more frequently. I hope everyone understands that we're talking about Aimo, knowledge. We're talking about Oyi, understanding. We're talking about Ogbon. We're talking about wisdom. And wisdom is simply the appropriate application of the understanding and the knowledge to the task at hand. Right? It's not something mystical. It's not something crazy. When we see the stick fighting in East Africa, and then we look on the tombs of some of the pharaohs, and we see all of the forms that will become Tai Chi in the Asian world. And then we see the African population move into India. We even know the brother's name, the priest, who then took the system that would become Kung Fu to the Sholan and established the Sholan Monastery in India, China, that produced all of the things that we know as karate and martial arts. It all came out of the belly of Africa, simply trying to demonstrate an understanding of cosmology and ecology. So you see a master like Bruce Lee, God bless his spirit and his soul, who was this great martial artist. But when he fought, he became the whooping crane. He was not the human being, Bruce Lee. He became this crane, the swooping crane that fought with its feet like this. And so our ancestors knew how to walk through the jungle or the rainforest and become the leopard when it was necessary to become the leopard. That may seem foolish to people, but it was not foolish to our ancestors. You understand? They could go to the water to fish, and they could call the fish to them. You ever see the brothers that pull in the net and they're singing, and you're hearing this beautiful rhythm, and they're getting on the boat and they're singing, and they're banging the paddles against the boat. They were all sending a message to the fish. Oh, my brother, my sister, I'm kind of hungry. I have people to feed back here. So will you come and get in my net, please? Forgive me for having to do what I have to do, but you will now become a part of me. And we will both be one and the same. What sounds so foolish, the West made our reality sound so foolish, we laughed at ourselves. And we didn't understand that we were one with the birds, that we were one with the tree. Everyone that's in the room with you, when you breathe, if you ever put your hand like this and you just, your breath, all that moisture comes on the back of your hand. Every time you breathe, you're putting all these millions of your cells in the air. And guess what? Other people breathe your cells in. You know, but we don't realize how much oneness we are. But our culture did, our ancestors did. They understood why they created such harmony where we live. So I wanted to come back to the thing you were saying about slaves. Servitude was necessary, but note, we didn't have prisons in Africa in our ancient days, right? We didn't have prison camps for people. I was reading I think it was Facing Mount Kenya by Jomo Kenyatta. And there's one story about a young man who had killed another young man in a dispute. And the elders then sat together from both communities and both families, and they pronounced his sentence. His sentence for the rest of his life was to take the place of that young man with his family, become their son, while still meeting his responsibility as family as their son. That is the highest level of humanity imaginable. They didn't kill him and now have two deaths in the community, two sets of animosities and anger and bitterness. No. It's, oh, you've taken that life. That life had certain duties and responsibilities. You must now assume those duties and responsibilities, along with the duties and responsibilities you have to your family for the rest of your life. That's African justice. We saw it happen in Rwanda, and we paid no attention. After the Rwanda genocide, they didn't set up the European-type world courts to kill a bunch of people. And those who still had arms, yes, the army had to go after them, and they ran into Congo, and those wars took place. But those who were left behind was brought into the traditional court and forgiven if they asked for forgiveness. It was allowed those who could, who hadn't done things too atrocious, to return as a partner in society with the very families that their hands had raised against, and rebuild another world for themselves, instead of the one that the Belgians, the French, the British, and the Americans had created that led to and produced that genocide in Rwanda. Do you understand what I'm saying? How you doing, Brother David? So I didn't want to have a conversation today and make African spirituality so removed, so esoteric that people go and form cults. And I see too much of that. Like, you don't see me sometimes. I love wearing my lekis because I know why I wear them. The lekis is the necklaces you wear, right? But I've seen people taking our tradition now and they open their own little house. And then the priests go and study and they got their little clique. And then they got people who their teachings acting like they're servants. The greater wisdom that you have, the bigger servant you're supposed to be to the one that have the least wisdom and knowledge. But they've done just the reverse, just like the white man in his church hierarchy. They brought that structure into our culture. That's not how our thing worked. That's not how it works. I am your servant. Like most time people say, people call me all the time for money. They don't know most of the time I speak. I don't speak for any money. I don't ask for money. If I have to travel away from home, of course I don't have the money. So somebody have to pay my way, give me a hotel. And if they can give me something to chop, that's fine. And sometimes people are amazed when that's what I ask for. Sometimes I'll give them a price and I can see, I know they can. So it's okay. Whatever you can do to help me, I'm coming. You do that. So to my brothers and sisters, no, I'm not rich. I have no money. I never needed it. The ancestors have always made sure I'm in need of nothing. I'm married to a very beautiful lady, 53 years, 54 years. She asked me yesterday, did you ever ask me to marry you? I said, 53 years later, you're going to ask me if I asked you to marry me? I said, of course I asked you to marry me. A year before we got married, I asked you, that was 2 months after we met, I asked you to marry me. You said yes. And she said, no, I had forgotten whether you asked. I said, then why did you marry me if I didn't ask? She said, oh, I didn't think about that.
Yeah, because you would have done it now. You would have had to do it now if you never asked.
But some things.
I went and paid her dowry.
Yeah, but spirit, I can bring this even to the spirit. We had 3 marriages in 3 months. Right? She had all the time to go away, run away, go, leave him alone. And she wouldn't run. She wouldn't go anywhere. I could, why was this one? There was one point I was saying, oh, I wish she would go. And we could nullify the last marriage. But the woman wouldn't go. I'm serious. She wouldn't go. And so the first marriage we had was in Malcolm X's sister's bedroom, Ella. And the man who performed our marriage was Haji Shem Jabba. He was the man that did Malcolm X Janatha, his funeral. And then we learned in a few weeks the thing, and the doctor next door give us our blood test free. Then you had to take blood tests. And, because we were just young people. She was 18, I was 23 or 4. And then we get a letter from the city, but we were not living together. Our marriage was secret. Her parents didn't know, my parents knew. And so I'm still talking about spirituality, because these things don't make sense to you when you're young. Mm-hmm. Then later when you look back, you say, oh my God, what occurred here? We get a letter from the city that says you're not really married because Hisham was registered in New Jersey, not New York. So now we have to go. So I give her the option. I mean, not you can go. This don't have to happen. Because I was living such a radical life, politically revolutionary, gun slinging, gun carrying in the streets and rallies and demonstration all the time, almost trying to get killed or going to jail because we had such a fatalistic attitude about fighting for freedom back then. And I wish we didn't, because we lost so many beautiful brothers and sisters. And so she wouldn't go. So we went down to the Islamic Center on 71st Street and Riverside Drive. And we just walked in and asked the imam would he marry us. And we didn't have no money. We were just college students, right? And so we had no witnesses. So some strangers who had just got married became our witnesses and signed our wedding, signed our marriage license. And the imam married us. And we were just dressed in traditional African street clothes, dashikis and buba. So now we go and we say, okay, we'll keep the marriage a secret for a year. And you stay at home with your parents, and I'll stay with my parents. We were married twice, and we had never had sex. She was a fine woman, still is, but I had certain concepts and ideas I was trying to learn about being African. I know people think that's crazy even to today. But at any rate, an incident happened. I get a scholarship to go study in Egypt at the El Azhar University, because now I had been elected the imam over Malcolm X's mosque, the Muslim mosque Inc., after this assassination. So as I'm preparing to go to Egypt, I get a word that the American intelligence people said if I do that, they'll kill my new bride. Yeah, I'm telling on y'all, because y'all did it, said it. And it came through the mouth of not a stranger. It came through the mouth of a member of my family who was an NYPD, a member of the New York City Police Department. So I know the message was sent to the person who they know I would have to believe. And so I decided to take my bride and leave town. But I couldn't just go to the house. I'm taking your daughter. They don't know we're married. Mm-hmm. And we were married for 3 months. They were leaving town. So we go to tell them we're married. But then she panics and says she wants to get married. Well, we had to have a third wedding then. And then they said, well, when do you want to get married? We said next week. So we got married a third time. And so 53 years later, we've struggled through all the years. You don't build a family and everything runs smooth. That's a myth. You have the struggles with each other, two strangers getting to know each other in a culture that's anti-family. And you're trying to be an African family in the midst of an anti-family culture, an anti-African culture. And then you're trying to raise children, and you have to send them to the school system that is anti-African, anti-human, really, and is not preparing them for anything except to be servants of an oligarch class that still rules America. So, looking for my ancestors, which I was taught very early, because my grandmother was an indigenous priestess. We call them root lady in America. But she had got it from her mother, who came from Sierra Leone. And she took the tradition forward. And so all my life, I've been struggling with this thing. I walked away from the church at 16. And I've been struggling trying to find this African thing. And I've traveled around Africa, and I've been taught by some of the best minds, and I've read some of the best literature by African writers and African-American, African Caribbean writers, looking for this thing. The thing has always been here. The thing is me. I am the universe. I am the sum total of all of my ancestors, all of their memories embedded in my DNA. I can wake them up with the language. I can wake them up with the thought patterns and the thought rhythm and vibrations that come from knowing our language and from loving our ancestors and from practicing our rituals and having those rituals explained and interpret to us, and practicing our festivals and having those festivals interpreted to us appropriately, and then taking on the behavior of the divine, walking towards the divine in character, Mm-hmm. And they made us afraid to do this. And for those who tried to return, we were attacked by our own people. We are set upon by our own people because they're lost and they're in the darkness and they're afraid that we'll disturb their comfort zones with our discussion about African spirituality. African spirituality is knowing not just how to construct the family, but why. And we've all lived in the world where we see that the system we live in can destroy our families like this.
Yeah.
Because the woman I married I was prepared to marry another woman before her. And we had sat with the preachers already and been advised. And she would end up having a baby for me, which I wouldn't know about for 5 years later after we broke up. Because the system, she did not want to be a part of the revolutionary movement, so she left me. But when she left me, she already had my baby in her belly. And when the baby was 5 years old, she was brought back to me by her family. That's my eldest child. So the system, there's a system that don't want to see us come together as family. That's why we see divorces. We can't get along because the value system changes from the time we were youngsters. And then one developed this value system depending on how much they're pulled into the system of the oppressor. And the other developed this value system because they may well be, closer to the village, closer to home, closer to the elders, closer to the ancestors. And we'll see marriages fall apart because of those value systems being violated, And so we have to really, don't kill it. Just push them away. Come on, go, go, go. Leave me alone. I'm doing work now. You can come back later and we'll talk. Whatever that ancestor is trying to tell them you'll talk to them. But I brought in
I don't even know what they're doing in my studio.
Let you see
Go ahead.
That the spirituality isn't something esoteric. It's very personal. It's very personal. It's your relationship to the rest of the universe. It's personal. It's not something you can never reach. You can reach it anytime. You can condition your mind to begin to move back in that direction. And the best way to condition your mind is to begin to recall your ancestors. Study your family tree. It doesn't matter whether they were an alcoholic. It doesn't matter whether they were a thief. It doesn't matter whether they were a saint. Every one of those persons fashioned you. Every one of them with their bad habits and their misbehavior was formed by the enemy's philosophy, ideology, and value system and worldview. It was designed to cripple them. But despite them being crippled, they still contributed something to you. I had alcoholics in my family, and they showed love for the children just like everybody else. They were hurt, they were injured, they were broken. But we didn't understand they were hurt, they were injured, they were broken. We pushed them away, many of us, but we didn't do that in ours. But I saw so many of it because they were the devil, they were the demons. We didn't understand. No, they were being destroyed by the devil and the demon. They were you. They were you. They were yours. They belonged to you. You were supposed to fight to try to bring them back. Instead, we pushed them away. Because that's what the enemy philosophy instructs us to do. Tear us apart. Because the family is a single organism. We're one. Ubuntu isn't just a word. It's the concept about how we are one. It isn't just a social construct or philosophical construct. We are really one. But to understand how we are one and how to remain harmonious in our oneness is what African culture was about. The vegetables in the field, we had a relationship with them. The sheep or the cattle in the pasture, we had a relationship with them. They weren't just something to go and milk and slaughter at will and go about like meaning nothing. No, they were family. They were family. I remember at home, we gave all of our cows names. All our pigs had names. All our goats had names. They were family. And I didn't understand the implications of that back then, but I do now. I do now. That culture is the educational system that teaches us our spiritual system. Our spiritual system is our knowing that we are one with the universe itself. That our environment, our ecology, and our cosmology, and us as participants with them is one being. Now, how do we do a relationship where we don't hurt parts of ourselves, where we don't poison the water deliberately, where we don't kill the trees deliberately, where we don't destroy the forest deliberately, where we don't poison the air deliberately? The person who we're following, who we're imitating, do all those things. They poison the air, they poison the water, they destroy the tree, they destroy the vegetation of the earth. They poison the food that we eat with the chemical recompositions. That's not African. That's just the opposite of African culture. We take it for granted. You can't take it for granted. We are the universe. That tree, every year, it puts all those leaves on itself when it's warm, and it pulls in all of the sun's energy so that it can do what it does as a tree. When the winter comes, it drops those leaves because it's cold now, and it don't need to have all those leaves that they have to feed because they no longer have the energy of the sun to produce the photosynthesis to feed those leaves. So they drop them to the ground, and those leaves keeps the root warm and even become fertilizer for new life. But more than that, that tree takes all the poisonous carbon dioxide, that is the gases, that is exhaust from our body having burnt the energy within us, and we exhale, and the tree soaks it up so we don't have the poison environment. And then that same tree gives off oxygen so that we can refresh ourselves again. Are we not the tree? Are we not one with the tree?
We just ate.
You know, and we know all of these things, yet we take it for granted what the relationship is and what the relationship should be. And so African spirituality is not a religion. It's not having a god named Oludumare. Oludumare is just a word we construct to describe the every and all things at once, out of which everything comes and is a part of eternally. That's all it is. We can pick another name. Every one of our languages have a different name to describe the same thing. So we're talking about changing our behaviors. We're talking about changing our values. We're talking about changing our beliefs. We're talking about studying our history. We're talking about getting a body of knowledge from our ancestors. We're talking about gaining an understanding of that body of knowledge. We're talking about then applying that body of knowledge as our wisdom system in our daily lives. Then we are practicing African spirituality. And it gets even deeper because you've got to know that you and your ancestors are one, that they're not dead and gone. We may have cried over the casket and we wore our black or our red and black or our red and even white, depending on their age. But that sadness and that remorse because we were going to miss having them in our physical space because that's how we got to know them. But now we have to learn to have them in our non-physical space and get to know them all over again.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. Yeah, when we turn inward, we are observing the universe. It can be said our spirit is without, and what we see without is within. Absolutely good definition. Absolutely good definition. Because that is the truth. And it is a truth that's backed up by all of the quantum physics and all of the science that exists. And that thing that the West calls science, we were practicing that when they met us. The Ashangi bones in the Congo is older than Greece, Rome, Turkey, or any of those places. The mathematics of ancient Sudan is older than any of those places. The mathematics, the geometry of Kemet, the trigonometry is older than any of those places.
Mhm.
So,
Professor James,
yes.
I'm sorry. I just want to redirect or get some facts because I know we're rounding up and shortly, even though we still have a couple of times with you, if you would permit. I'm just
Mhm.
saying it because we wanted to keep it that smart
Yeah.
and um of course, thank you so very much first for actually passing on this message. I know, like you said, those, or even like the word is when you open your heart to your ancestors, the message would be communicated in different forms and energy from what we are understanding. I mean, like I'm referring to the audience that is watching us. But some practical things, just daily practical things. I know from the spirituality that comes within us, then the culture is manifested through the actions of our ancestors that we then carry.
Right.
And that's why you talk about like the festival or the language or
Yeah.
speaking or gatherings, commemorating or just even feeling the pain of one another without being explained, which in other cultures, you really have to explain or somebody has to really bleed out for you to understand that pain. But in the African science or spirituality, you just feel it without even somebody actually like when somebody's hurt, you feel it within you that that person is hurt.
Well,
All right, but some particular, just simple
mhm,
ethics or simple tools or simple
mhm,
things like we talked
right.
about Ubuntu. It was like growing up in the village, it was a taboo for you not to greet somebody. A taboo.
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
I'm taking the smallest element,
Mhm.
greetings, which Ubuntu is like you meet each other. It's just I don't know. You don't even think about it. But if we look, I mean, I'm just talking about some daily practices of
Mhm,
how
mhm.
African spirituality works in our daily lives. Because for some people, it's just like they have to go and study some quantum
No.
physics now,
No.
or have to go and read some books like the ones that we're talking about, or try to reimagine. But I just want to
Right.
bring some
Yeah.
simple examples. The one that you talked about, we are energy. I
Mhm.
looked back and like all of us left, okay, our father's compound and then in the cities and then now in the diaspora, most of us, even our successor. And then a picture was sent to us from our father's compound, like the village compound.
Mhm.
Professor, like you could not recognize it. It was not recognizable. And so that energy, even if it was one person that was still in that huge compound and the yard and the farms, it will be okay. But because there's no single person that is there, the compound has been taken into a forest, like a mini forest, as a matter of fact. Like
Mhm.
even you cannot recognize the places you used to because everything is just taken. And so I want to actually clap on your back on that essence of we are energy. Because
Mhm.
even when we leave our homes and we go on vacation, you come back, your house is molded. And sometimes we
Mhm.
don't realize that it's because we don't breathe again
Yes.
in those spaces, like the moist that we were saying. That's what we're seeing the mold. So that's the spirituality in a simplistic way. We don't greet each other again, even just to say hello. Or like
Mhm.
sometimes, even in the groups, we just say Ubuntu. For somebody to just like, what is it that has actually taught us so apart? Like, we don't even have the sense just to say hello, hello. It's more than even writing a whole text, like
Mhm.
good morning, how are you? Because, like, I think those basic steps of learning African spirituality, just even by meeting your brother or your sister on the way, it looks like you and say hello for those that are conscious. In the diaspora, we see it regularly. You see somebody, they just throw face, like they don't even want to identify. On the continent, too, is already becoming like that. But even us in the conscious community, in our groups, we're still doing that. How do we put this kind of little elements of African spirituality? Because that's the connection, that's the contact, that's the unity, that's the everything simple, basic steps.
Mhm.
Why are we still, on that high space where
Well, we have to start with ourselves. And the first thing I tell everybody that in every home, find a space, find a little space, a corner with a small table, put some white cloth on it because it's easier to know when it needs changing because of dust and things. And put the pictures of your ancestors that you revere on that table. Let them know that you remember them. So you put a glass of water every day to let them know this is a gesture that I'm refreshing you every day. That gesture brings you very much closer to those spirits. You may put also, we always say, a white candle. On the special day, their birthday, light the candle. Give them a little piece of food in a plate. We know the food is not being eaten by something you can't see. The gesture of sharing what you eat with them. In very tight African community, there's always a little plate, or you always put a little something, or maybe you go outside the house and you put a little something.
They always drop it on the floor and say they feed the gods.
Yes.
Yes.
And so they're talking about the ancestors when they do that. And so that's a light practice we could do just in our home. Pictures, a glass of water, a candle, a white cloth. Photographs of those ones you revere and you think have done well, who've been good models and examples. The second thing is learning how to meditate. Take 30 minutes out of every day. Do nothing. Turn off the radio, turn off the television, turn off the telephone, and take 30 minutes, just you and the universe, and meditate. And we call it prayer. You can call it prayer, and there's no particular posture you have to be in. Different cultures have different postures, but just sit quietly and listen to your inner self. Listen to all those thoughts that's going to rush through your head. They're confusing at first because there's too many thoughts. You can't focus on any single one. But as time goes on, you'll be able to separate them and focus on them. And have a book. Pick a book. Study our history. You don't have to have 100 books. Get one. And read it from cover to cover and understand what the ancestor is saying or the scholar is saying. Learn the basic history. Learn geography of Africa. You be surprised how important it is when someone say Tanzania, you know exactly what's on the left side, the right side, the front side, the back side. It's just beautiful to know that. And then whatever the next country, you know the same thing. Learn the geography of Africa, and then make sure, because many of us, especially those of us who was taken in the diaspora and slave trade, we don't know a language. But many of you who have left home and left your language behind and not teaching it to your children that you're having abroad, teach those children the language. Have them speak in the house the language. If you're afraid to speak outside the house, okay, I understand what you're up against. But in the house, speak the language to one another. Because in the language is so much jewels and gems that the ancestors have left us. Those are the little things. And as Susan was saying, something like, good morning, how are you? Have a beautiful day. You look wonderful today. Let me give you an embrace. Those things may seem so simple, but you make people feel comfortable. You take away the anxiety and the fear. You let them know that somebody cares. You let them know at the same time that they belong to something even beyond themselves. They belong to you. And as we practice that in a wider sphere, you will see a different vibration coming in that group of people and the relationship to one another. Those are the immediate things I would say that's doable when we get off of this Zoom today.
Mm-hmm. And then another thing concerning the connection, like our deceased, our transcend. Mm-hmm. In the other cultures, I want to put it that way, there is always this notion like, oh, I have a time to mourn And then after that time, it's like, then you forget. I'm talking because of the connection, like we say, constant
That's
connection.
another
Second,
culture's
spiritually,
viewpoint.
so we don't have a time to mourn. And then it's like, my father died how many years ago? Every day we are connected. Could you just a little bit,
Right.
because during these are the things that separate us from and making us difficult to get. When we hear ancestors, people begin to think like all the thing, because we've been so drained in this religion that, oh, now they're gone, now he's not longer, now he's not. No, please, can you just, the last thing that you want to remind us?
I speak to my mother every day, everywhere I am. I was in
Yes.
Ghana this summer, and I always take a photograph with me and some of the other ancestors, and I always set up my altar, whatever hotel I landed. So I'm leaving Ghana, and I took the 2 grandchildren, which I knew she would be happy, because one of them, I think, really possessed her, the young one. And so when we're coming back through the security, they stopped me. So I have my stuff for so long, but I'm always carrying my laptop, and I carry a portable printer, and I got my cameras, all the little things you need, and your phones. And they went through my backpack and my other bag, and they said, there's something in the corner. I said, oh, do you mean the printer? Because it's a small printer. They said, oh, no, we see that. I said, well, they said, oh, no, it's not the laptop. And I said, all these other gadgets. They said, no, there's something in the corner that the x-ray picked up. So I said, well, the only thing in that corner, because she told me to move the things with my hand, was a black bag, a silken bag. In the black bag is my mother's shrine to the little bell, her picture. And so they asked me to open it. I opened it. I said, this is only my mother's picture. They said, that's it. That's what the machine is picking up. And I'm standing there going like, okay. They said, we have to now run it through. So they did it very gently. They said, we now have to run it through the scanner. And so they took my mother's picture and they ran it through the scanner. And they said, but it's so heavy. I said, oh, because the frame, I said, is made of cast iron. She said, you sure it's not gold? I said, oh, maybe they're thinking of smuggling gold, but that's not what. The machine picked this thing up. They picked up her energy. And I think that was her way of telling me, thank you for bringing my babies home.
Yes.
And I said to her, girl, you still doing it. You like, we talk all the time anyway, And so she was my guide. She was my teacher. She was my back. When I couldn't even see danger, she'd call my brothers, you better come because your brother's in trouble. My brother flew all the way from California, get all his friends with their weapons. And it was some life back then. But that thing with my mother at the airport told me a lot. That's just let me see you. This is just a frame with the picture of a beautiful lady, right? That beautiful lady. But somehow the computer didn't set anything off. The portable printer didn't set anything off, but this lady did. What about her? Because somehow her being with me in this room all these years, going with me all over the world, the energy that is her have found the place to land. And they didn't know what that energy was. What was that vibration? The little black bag in the corner of my suitcase was giving off. That none of this other technical stuff. I had a suitcase full of stuff. None of it gave off. But this little lady, this little African woman, right, gave off energy that they had to take my baby and scan her again. But they were courteous when they realized, because they understood when they realized that was a picture of my mother, they realized, oh, we better not be foolish. And so they were very courteous with her. And I realized then that there's so much we don't know about rhythm, vibration, electricity, energy. That was my mother when she lived in that body. When we buried that body, that cluster of energy, vibration, and rhythm did not go in that ground. That which she was, that was housed in that body, stayed right with us. And it dwells where we dwell, in me and around me. And so even a photograph of her in a frame, look at her. She's looking at me like she's smiling and laughing at her son.
Yeah, she does. That we're even talking about her right now.
Yeah, she knew it. But and that's what people have to understand, what you just explained. Yes, we do the ceremony of saying goodbye to the house that we once lived in. But remember, even before that house was no longer occupiable, they had created us as them, as the new house to live in. And that personality, that set of energy, that configuration of energy and vibrations and rhythm and electricity that we heard and we felt and we smelt, now come into the multiple houses of their children.
Yes.
To dwell. People could say, well, if you got her and you, what about your brother and sisters? Now she's big enough to be in all of us, because all of us came through her belly, through her womb. What she processed in her body fed us for 9 months. You know, her energy, her rhythm, her values, her understanding, her point of view created us. And that vibration and that harmony and that balance and that rhythm and that electricity, that was us, that she created a beautiful little house for, is now free to accept her without a body. And if we go back millions and millions and millions of years, we have created these patterns, these rhythm patterns called life and living. They are ancestors. They will teach us. They will instruct us. They will inform us. They will guide us if we return to them and says, Ubuntu, you belong to me. I belong to you. I am of you. You are of me. Help me, guide me. You have an experience before me. I can't see backwards. I can see forward. So take the light from behind me and shine it in front of me. And that's what they do. You know?
So is it okay to teach if you were teaching people that have been distracted into, and they're returnees? Because I have a lot of returnees that were religious, that were Christians, that are coming back.
But
and
just remind them.
But the simple, sorry, Prof, on the simple way I try to put it, not try to put it, or from the way I'm giving and I give it, is like, just replace it. If you believe like your word or your own, the other thing is telling you after 3 days, somebody rose and is alive, and you sing it every day, is alive. Just replace that. Just replace that, because that's the little trick that cuts you off from them. So if I know after 3, yes, and it's 3 days also that we do the transition ceremony in the village and everything. They give clothes, the sackcloths to their uncles and everything that was pertaining. And after that 3 days, the family gets back to know that they received the spirit back, and then it's alive forever. That's the only single point that was changed, but it's the same. It's just that you're believing in somebody else, that you've been believing in the thing that is yours now.
No, I think that's a very beautiful way of putting it, because you're explaining a very strong truth. If we were to pay attention to most of what we do, we still reference back our culture, but we do it almost blindly, right? If we would just stop and say, oh, wow, the reason I have all those pictures on my piano, because that's my shrine. The reason I have all these photographs of the ancestors on my mantle, because that is my shrine. Only thing that's missing is the white cloth and the glass of water and the candle. Right? But we do it instinctively, but we don't know how to own it. Right? And we've taught other cultures to do it. I remember when Diana, the princess in Europe, died, and the people came with all of the flowers and things around the gate to Buckingham Palace. Just tons of flowers. You never saw that anywhere in the world. until about 20 years ago, a Haitian young person was killed by a Jewish person accidentally in a car in Brooklyn, but the person ran off. And the Haitian community who was practicing voodoo began a tradition of coming to the place, bringing flowers, lighting candles. Now the whole world does it. No one knows when it was first started. Go back and you'll see there is when it was started. So when I'm seeing them doing it at Diana's memorial, I went back to the streets of Brooklyn where that child was killed by the car and the man ran off. And the community came forward. And from that day forward, whenever someone died in anywhere, starting in New York, but anywhere in America, the people came with the flowers, they came with the candles. And I goes, until the voodoo priest did that for that child, we never did that as a demonstration. We did not. Now we see it side the road, whatever the car accident, we see it everywhere. And so once you begin to realize that we never really lost our culture, we just don't know how to use it anymore. We didn't lose our spirituality. We are afraid to say we have it. We know it's there because we know in our thoughts what we think of when something goes wrong. But we are afraid to come to the public in that dress or that suit. So we hide it in ourselves. And we take their methodologies of expressing sadness and remorse, and we demonstrate that because that's what everybody's doing. So you can dance with them, sing with them, and it appears that you're one with them, but you walk away with the pain being just as deep as it was before you walked in. So there's something else we don't know. If I knew that my mother is not gone, my hurt is so much less. Yes, I will miss her. Yes, she was the sweetest human being I've ever met in my life and will ever meet. But I know she'll always be with me and she always guides me. And she's my main protector and my oldest sister, Eleanor, who's also an ancestor. She flies my planes wherever I go in the world. And that's because that's what my grandmother told me. That her mother, when I'd stopped flying because there was an air crash and I was afraid, she came to me in a dream and says, you don't have to be afraid anymore. Your sister will fly your planes. I took a plane to Ghana the very next day, or 2 days. And I've been flying ever since, you know. So there are things we have to understand about ourselves. I used to give people an exercise to sit in front of the mirror in the morning. I think I once told you that exercise. And I think when I first was telling you that exercise, you think, well, no, Prophet's being fresh. Because I was saying, sit in front of the mirror in your birthday suit and have a conversation with yourself about yourself.
Mm.
Ask yourself all the questions you don't want anybody else to hear. And listen for the answers that the spirit and the mind that makes you up will give back to you.
Mm.
Over time, you'll get comfortable doing it. And you'll begin to hear better the messages from your ancestors, talking about you, what you need to do with everything from your health to how you present yourself in the public, how you purport yourself as a human being. You know, what do you expect of yourself as a human being, as an African human being? How do you learn your story again, sing your songs again, and dance your dance without feeling conscious or ashamed or embarrassed in front of other people? You know, how do you let your ancestors come and tell you, I'm happy today, and you dance with someone you can't see, but you know they're dancing with you because they're dancing in you while they're dancing with you, and not care what the world think or say. You know, that's where we have to really focus. But history is an essential part because those bits and pieces of knowledge, those bits and pieces of raw information that the ancestors left behind are the stimulus to help you to remember, to recall that aspect of their lives that is not essential for you to learn to use in your life. And so studying the history is important. And what we're saying here is nothing new. Emma Cabral said the same thing. Kwame Nkrumah said the same thing. Jomo Kenyatta was saying the same thing. I'm sure Nani of the Maroons was saying the same thing. They were all saying we must return to being Africans. We must return to being our ancestors. Because some people say, oh, I don't like the word Africa because it comes from North Africa. Okay, then let's just become our ancestors. We won't call it anything. Let's just become whoever our ancestors was. Let's just grasp an understanding of their worldview. And let's just tell them, I love the you that was me before the me that is me now. And I want to learn from the you that was me before the me who is me now. You know? And for those brothers and sisters who could not give physical birth for many of the multiple reasons, any child that you choose to be your child becomes you by the very vibrations of your voice, by the very rhythm of your thoughts, by the very actions of your body, will change the molecular structure, the DNA of the child. They've already proven in all kinds of experiments, you can change the DNA of water with just voice. You can change the DNA of what's going on in a room with drum rhythms. So we know the science of nature is real. And you're really not changing anything. You're simply getting something to recognize itself in you and you
Absolutely.
recognizing yourself in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but in our tradition, there never was a barren woman.
Right.
Never.
No.
No woman was barren. Every woman had a child. It's just that some other mothers carried the children for the others spiritually.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there never was the word didn't even exist.
We were still practicing that down south. And I remember when there was a family, Mr. Johnson, who was our cousin, but his wife could not conceive. So my sister, the one 2 persons above me, 4 years above me, was given to them. She didn't come back to our house until she was about 18 or so.
Me too. I was also given over.
Yeah.
There was nothing like any motherhood could not, I mean, in the same family, but most of the children, those that had much, and it was like literally everything you're saying, Prof, they just copied from us, this thing of adoption or in this way. Mothers free willy and the village culture gave their children, gave it. They gave it like, no, you can have mine. And they would share. Can you imagine that system today? Or sometimes when I teach my returnees, because I do African spirituality counseling, like how to get back to yourself and be that. And once you just imagine the energy that you say, I pray 3 times a day, or I sing and I do. Imagine when you transform that energy and you do it for your ancestors, for yourself. Just imagine how in just a little while you're somebody else.
Yeah, and the other thing that people could do, because we've now gotten so much more information, those of us in the diaspora especially, but those at home who ran away from the shrine and would not go to certain houses. I remember when I would go to see my spirit mother teacher in Kumasi, the cabs would not take me down her street. They would drop me at the corner because they were afraid to go to her house. And the 1 or 2 I convinced to get me at least to the gate, as soon as I paid them, they were gone. And because they were made to be afraid of one of the sweetest, most beautiful human being I had ever met. Nana Fuasa Afriye. She was the chief priestess of Kumasi, Abashante, under 2 Sante Henes. But you begin to understand what the fear they've put into us.
Yes.
So I tell people, start learning. Find whether it's Congo, whether it's Cameroon, whether it's Nigeria, whether it's Igbo, whether it's Yoruba, whether it's Akan or Ewe, begin to learn one of the spiritual systems of Africa. You don't have to leave the church. Stay right there in the church. Stay right there in the mosque. But I guarantee you, if you begin to study, just like you study all these other things you studied, the spiritual system of our ancestors, you will come back home because you will see the lie walking in the door. You will see the falsehood and misrepresentation of those beautiful systems of how to understand our cosmology and our ecology. When the Yakans talk about having 7 spirits, you will learn what those 7 spirits are. And I'm not talking about the Obosum, the forces of nature, which is multiples, you know. Or when you go into the Yoruba system and you learn about the Orisha, they're not gods. They're powers in nature that the ancestors have recognized, delineate and discern that we can learn from. And then we learn that those powers are also in us as a potential. And so to once you realize you have a potential, then you can learn the science of developing that potential. And those are the things we call Orishas. Now, they may get a name of someone who lived, who was a great person, right? And so, and exemplified that quality and attribute and potential that's in you. But their name is only to commemorate an ancestor who did well with developing that quality and attributes. And that's what the white man calls saints in his culture.
Mm-hmm.
Not gods. And then you realize that every force and power in the universe is in you. And our ancestors learned to isolate many of them and identify many of them. So if you begin to study one of the systems, you will see, you will be informed. There's a point at which your body of knowledge will not be external. Your primary body of knowledge will no longer be external, but it becomes internal. That you begin to be taught from something within you, but you have to wake it up with the information from without you. That's the best way to say that one.
Wonderful. Everything is just true. I'm very thankful, just to inform our audience that Professor Baena is launching the 7 principles of voodoo.
Oh, yes.
And that's going to be the best, that's the start point where we're going to start at teaching this. So at least we have something to start on that point. So the launching.
And I've read most of the book, and it is wonderful.
Yes.
And it is simple. The Loas are the same thing to the voodoo system in Haiti as the Orishas are to the spirit system in the Yoruba land, as the Obosum is to the spirit system in Akon land, and the Netta is to the spirit system in ancient Kemet and Sudan. It is our ancestors saying we recognize it, the forces of nature that lives within us as potential. And so we're devising a cultural system that would allow you to isolate and develop that potential deliberately in yourself as an attribute of the divine, which you're a representative of on earth eternally. Because I have a bunch of children, so I can't die. And they have a bunch of children. 8 children, 24, 23 grandchildren. I am eternal. And all of them are going to have children, I pray. And I expand even greater. But even me, I'm a representative of millions that lives in my DNA, that lives in the cell, the molecules, the protons, the neutrons that make up my body. Millions of experiences. And then, like we were talking about breathing, I'm inhaling you. I'm inhaling your DNA every time I breathe in your presence. I've only been in your presence 2 days, but I inhaled a lot of Susan. We hugged, we laughed, we spoke on the same stage, we took photographs together, and each time we were sharing our physiological self, our energy self, our spiritual self. And even when we do these shows to try and teach, we are sharing of ourselves, the energy that is us. And I'm absorbing across all this expanse the energy that is you. I'm sitting here looking at you. There's no wire connecting me to you. You're flying through outer space as electrons, protons, and neutrons being broken down into invisibility until this instrument allows you a space to reconfigure yourself. And I can see you. This is a science that they learned from our science. Western science is nothing more than African sacred science without the sacred.
Correct.
You know?
Like,
so you can go back to Plato, who's one of the big philosophies, and he tells you that. He says the Ethiopian has given the world all of its sciences. And he begins to read them off. He says the Ethiopian has given, this is Plato. Plato is a big man in your existence. So you can't play Plato down. And in the book, it's called the Phaedrus or Phaedra. And he says that the Africans have given the world arithmetic, geometry, medicine. And then he says one of the greatest science of all the Africans have given to the world is the science of writing itself. This is Plato. So that's a powerful thing. You know, it's a powerful thing. If you want to understand why weaker people who are not willing to pay the sacrifice to be at one consciously with the universe would carry on the abuse they're carrying on of this universe. Mm. And we are simply a part of the universe that's being abused. You know, in essence, they're abusing God. And we are that part of God that they see as being too much of a reflection. It's too much of a reminder of what they are not. And I don't mean to hurt anybody's feelings, because this is not about racism at all. Because we know there are many people who are European and Asian looks, genetics, but who have died for our freedom as well, unhesitatingly. I've had some that I call and still call my brothers and my best friends, though they are ancestors now, were in my lifetime. And I was in my very radical political element even then, more so than I am now. And yet these men stood at my side. And they were as white and European as can be and men of power. But they were my brothers and them my friends. So we're not talking about racism. Racism is when someone who has power use that power to impose their prejudice on someone else. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the behavior of a group of people, both passive and active, in a process of genocide against another people who have not done anything to warrant that reaction of genocide against them. You know? And so people have to take responsibility for what they own as inheritance. If you want to take responsibility, if you say, I inherited this wealth, I inherited this land, are you willing to take responsibility how that came to be your inheritance? Mm. And the price that someone else paid for that. Mm. But yet we know they cannot kill us. Look at us, Susan. Do we look like we're oppressed?
I wonder.
They're so confused. But the trouble is, they got us confused, thinking we are not who we are. I'm African. They say, oh, but you're brown. Oh, yeah. But brown is nothing but a shade of black. I'm African. I'm satisfied with being the brown African. because brown is a shade of my blackness, which was my eternal beginning. But that first jet black, soot black woman, when the universe decided I'm going to be human, the only way it could proceed is that you had to produce the womb of the black woman in the body of the most beautiful creature on the planet Earth. Wherever you see her, I feel so guilty that every time I see a black woman, I'm in love with her. Every single one. Sometimes I feel like, oh, I'm gonna can't hear my thoughts. But I love our women so deeply. You are so much, you're my mother, you're my sister, you're my daughter, you're my wife, you're my auntie, you're my girlfriend. And it's hard sometimes to be in the world where you show respect and love to your woman and people misinterpret.
Yes.
They don't understand what love is. And when they see that black woman, I'm looking at you here. You are the universe manifest. And you do everything we give the universe credit for. You can do those things, but someone has interrupted and disrupted your flow with this colonialism and this slavery, which is simply greed. Out of envy and jealousy and hatred comes violence and destruction and death. But for them, it's death. For us, we are eternal. I remember one night when these people had tried to remove my physical body, and I'm hiding in this marsh in the swamps down in South Carolina. And somehow I knew they would not kill me. I knew they could not kill me. And when I escaped in the morning, though they were chasing me for blocks after blocks until I reached my uncle's house, I knew I would be alive in my family's arms. I knew that even when I was cold and in that marsh and my body was wet and my shoes was wet and they were out there with their guns. And even though I was blessed, Grandma had given me a 2-shot Derringer for my 16th birthday, and I had it with only 2 shots. I fired one in the air and not backed them off because they didn't know what I had. And I saved the one that if it was the last minute, I would take somebody with me. But I didn't have to do that. You know. Listen, spirituality is very personal. It's between me and the universe. And you are the universe. You don't, and I'm looking even at you. I don't know, do you see you the way I see you? You're like the sun. You know, I'm the moon. I reflect you, your light. Some days I'm the sun and you're the moon and you reflect my light. But we are the universe in all of its elements, all of its power, all of its rhythm, all of its harmony, all of its balance, all of its imbalance. And that's why our ancestors was trying to tell it at Kemet. They give you Heru and they gave you Set. People say, oh, Set, the white man said, Set is evil, he's the devil. No, the Africans never said that. They said Set represent the opposite. But Heru also represents the opposite. And when the polar opposites meet each other, they must balance and create harmony. You can't have harmony unless you have the opposites.
Aish. This is so strong.
Mm.
Professor James, ooh, you're going to light out this place. I'm telling you, it is almost 3 hours. And I remember you were saying, Dr. Tata, we cannot hold this for 2 hours. When the ancestors are pouring, I feel it. All of us, we are here. And
but
many students are joining it.
There was a song when I was young. It's called, you want to get right down to earth, but you want to get right down to earth. When you got right down to earth, we want to go back to Accra. We want to go back to Lagos. You want to go back to Kampala. You want to go back to Johannesburg. And say, how do we tell somebody there who's thinking that they're reality is reality, because they can't look left or right. To tell them to look left, look right. On either side of you, your ancestors are waiting for you to show them that you want them in your life, that you're realizing they exist. Somebody told you you cannot walk 10 miles to get a bucket of water. Show them you can walk 20 miles to get your bucket of water if necessary.
We did it in the village.
We're still doing it.
And we're still doing it.
You know? And then tell yourself, oh, how much does it really cost to do a borehole for my village? How much does it cost to build a well for my village? Every Christmas, the members of the village who travel to the UK, to France, to Italy, to America, they come back home with enough money to build 50 boreholes. But we don't direct the money to build 50 boreholes. We direct money to buy a pretty dress, a pretty pants, a pretty suits, or toys or something. But what we really need in the village was the borehole, so we can have the well, so we didn't have to walk 10 miles to get the water. To get our minds there. That's when spirituality becomes reality.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Correct, on point.
Yes, ma'am. And so that's what we want our people to see, that I can do anything I want to. I can be anything I want to. If we were to take all of the inventions in the Western world that they're bragging about their high technology, we will find that most of them came from Africans who was even under colonial and slavery duress while they were inventing all this extraordinary technology that the Western world now lives off of. And we're still doing it. And so we can build our world. We can provide the food, clothing, shelter, and safety for ourselves. That's a spiritual act to recognize the necessity of that. And when we realize the necessity, we will say, what will it take to fulfill this necessity that is facing us? How come we've got a whole land sitting there growing things without us deliberately clearing it and planting specifically for ourselves? Let's not leave that land just to go through it. Let's plant what we need. Oh, we need some greens. Let's plant the greens. So we need some tomato. Let's plant the tomato. We need some carrots. Let's plant the carrots. Let's feed ourselves. We are on the best piece of earth in the world. I usually tell people, you urinate on the soil in Africa and the urine will grow. Because the soil is so fertile in most places. So why someone has told us, do you know that the International Fund and the World Bank will only loan money to African countries if they sign an agreement not to produce their own food? Did you know that? Let me say it again. The International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, and before they would loan any money to an African nation or what they call a third world nation, we must sign an agreement not to produce our own food, but to import food from their countries. But all the land in Africa, we were importing all this rice from other countries. We grow the best rice in the world. We're importing all this wheat from the country that's having the war today. And why? We can have the whole village is a farm. But when you are taught that you must import your food, otherwise your livelihood will be cut off. But Burkina Faso have turned all of that on its head. Mali has turned all of that on its head. Nigeria have turned all of that on its head. Watch the bouncing ancestors, because that's who those brothers and sisters are. And it isn't just Toure. He's just the one and the leader. There are men and women around and behind him making these decisions, coming up with these ideas of what to do next. The same thing in Mali, the same thing in Niger. We're now seeing the growing move from Chad and from Senegal. We know it's doable. In 2 to 3 years, the people of Burkina Faso produced enough food to feed themselves that they were able to open canning factories to preserve the food that was the surplus in less than 3 years. Before that, the French says, no, you don't plant anything, you import it from France, and we will sell you the food that you eat, which will poison you with all of its preservatives. You're going to get your high blood pressure. You're going to get your sugar diabetes. You're going to get your cancers, because this is what we serve up as water and food. So go back to your ancestors. Go back to the days when we plant our own food right in our front yard and our backyard.
Yes.
You didn't need no tractor. If you got a tractor, that's wonderful. If you can use it well so it doesn't hurt the soil. But we know Africa has a thin topsoil. And so you have to handle it gently. That's why so much working by hand is good. A village can feed itself, but it has to believe that it can do that. Turn to your ancestors, they'll remind you of when you did that. You know, and you can do it again.
Charging.
So spirituality is your reality. Spirituality is being involved in and living that thing you call reality. Remember the cosmos, all those things we see up in the sky, all that light is absorbed by your body. We're nothing but stardust, people. Everything that has ever exploded in the universe has sprinkled its elements. Those are our minerals and our elements that make up our bodies and make up the body of the trees and the other things that live here. The energy from the sun and the stars and the other light source that comes to us is what fuels us. When I eat carrots, I'm eating sunlight. When I eat tomato, I'm eating sunlight. When I eat greens, I'm eating sunlight. When I eat mango, I'm eating sunlight. I'm eating energy. You understand? We are the universe. We can eat everything in our environment to replenish ourselves on a daily basis. So we are everything in our environment. So the religions that have confused us to submit to the forces that have been destroying us, and who destroyed us when we were our ancestors. I want to make that plain. They destroyed us when we were our ancestors. And what we must do today is realize that we are our ancestors.
Ashe.
We are our ancestors. And our health is one of the highest, the maintenance of our health is one of the highest forms of spirituality, one of the highest act of spirituality. Because to do that, you must have a relationship with all of the other things in nature, with the food, with the air, with the water, with the animals, with the birds. All of those things is in a relationship to constantly recreate you. As you burn up millions of cells every day, you reach out to them to replenish you. So are you not the bird? Are you not the fish? Are you not the tomato? Are you not the squash? Are you not the yam?
Vegetables?
Yes.
Everything.
That's who we are.
So amazing.
We are the whole world. We are the universe. We are the environment. The light that we get from the sunlight, if we were to try to eat raw sunlight, that radiation would burn us up. But if we eat the sunlight that's stored in a carrot, or stored in a squash, or stored in a mango, or stored in a breadfruit, that energy is the same energy that came from the sun, but is stored in a vessel that will not destroy us when we consume it. But it's the same energy. that we need to keep our generators going. That's African culture. This is not lost on our people. Study the Orishas of the Yoruba. Study the Obosun of the Akan. Study the writings and the teachings of an ancient people in Sudan and Kemet. They were saying exactly what I'm saying right now, because that's what I learned.
And we also have even herbs to help enhance us now. You know, we have new herbs that are coming that we used to, even to bathe with them or to speak to them, that actually helps us now to get our consciousness back as faster. You know, we went on this for 2 years and everything, even the beads that we're saying for the women on you know, on their ankles, to get even to regenerate your recreation, your body back, to regenerate your body, whether it's from your womb or cleansing all of the cells in your body. We have all the herbs now. And they're showing us everything that used to connect, and they're using it. So it's not even just by our own thinking, but we have all the natural things, the earth, the soil, typical soils. When do you use them? When do you walk on it? When do you bathe on them? What do you eat before you go to bed? So we have everything for us now. So it's personal now.
We have to use it. We have to not be afraid. We have to know the difference. We invented makeup, but we have to tell the difference between makeup and poison, right? We still can have generic makeup that enhance our beauty without having the chemicals that will poison and sicken us.
True.
We can wear clothing that's not made of material of petroleum, that if you bump into a spark, you become a blaze, a torch, because you're wearing gasoline as a dress or a suit and not understanding it. Okay, there are textiles in the world that's made from natural elements in the ecology. All of these things are a spiritual act of return to self, you know. And we must begin to study these things and realize these things.
That's so true. If you look at the Wouda Bay culture, that the men, even the foundations that we use, what color does it has? It's the African earth.
Yeah. Especially when you watch the brothers who, when they're looking for brides in Chad, I forgot the name.
Yeah, that's, I mean, the Wouda Bay cultures.
Oh, yes.
They have it all. In Chad, it's a whole celebrated ceremony.
And so we just have to return to the ways of our ancestors. That don't mean you drop your guard. We learn from history the mistakes we made that made us vulnerable to our enemies. We don't want to repeat those mistakes, but we can't continue to allow our enemies to make us clones of themselves so that we become the drones that manage our own people into their own demise. We have to free ourselves of being the predators that is produced by copying the culture and the value system and the worldview of our enslavers and our colonizers. That is one of the major steps in spirituality that the African must undergo. Realize that what he has done is created us as clones and clones of him, of his worst self. Okay, clones of his worst self, which now he doesn't have to live in Africa. His mind and our brain will now control Africa for his interests. We can call them corrupt or whatever little terms we want to use, but you're talking about the minds of the enemy being in the bodies of the Africans, carrying out the work of the enemy against the family of the Africans.
Then we have to detox it. It's only African spirituality, like you're saying, Prof. That's the only.
It is the only solution.
That's
the key. If you
key.
can't free your mind, you will not be able to free your behind. Let's say it again. If you can't free your mind, you will not be able to free your behind. Very simple. You know, very simple. And we always believe the secret to life is to have no fear, because there's no such thing as death in our understanding of the universe. Just like we know there's no beginning, so there could be no end. If somebody tell you they know when the universe began, you ask a silly person, then what did it begin from? All right? And you said, oh, it came out of nothingness. Even nothingness is something. You know? So if there was a void, even the void is something. Okay? It's like our ancestors really had this thing right. But colonialism has interrupted our rebirthing our consciousness. Slavery interrupted our rebirthing our consciousness, or the aftermath of slavery and colonialism is not interrupting. So now we must restore ourselves by teaching ourselves, using our ancestors' experiences, our primary documents, to do that. Then we'll be able to tell which one is our ancestor who loved us and cared about us, and which one is his murderer and his thief and his genocider who did not love or care about us. And then we have to make a decision which one of those we want to be. I've made my decision. I am my beautiful lady. I am this African woman and her husband and her parents and their parents and their parents, you know, and that's eternal. And she knows, you know. And I remember the day she left. She wasn't sick. She had had a heart condition. They said she would be gone in 1 year. So her doctor says, aren't you from the South? I said, yes. So why don't you take your mother home? Maybe she'll have a better time. She has 1 year. Let her live that year out down in the South and not in the bustle of New York. So I called my sisters and said, we got to take her home. Oh, she was angry. She told my daughter, said, your daddy threw me away. He says, I don't know these ladies down here. She said, they're my daughters, but I've been living with him all these years, and she sent me to these strangers. And I went down to see. I said, no, they wanted you to get to know your daughters again after all these years of you living there and them living here. And so she lived more than that 1 year, more than 2, more than 3. She lived 5 years when they said 1 year. And then one day she just went to the old house where she was born, where one of my sisters lived. And she sent them all out to the store, and she sat in her mother's rocking chair. And when they came back, she was gone.
Typical.
Just like that. You know? So spirituality is your reality. You just have to accept and involve yourself in it consciously. And you can only do that if you study your history. Your history is simply the adventures of your ancestors. That's all history is. Your history is the adventures of your ancestors. Good or bad. Learn those adventures. And within the adventures, you will learn about their system of understanding reality. How they knew nature, how they knew cosmology, how they understood family, how they understood group, how they understood race, how they understood health, how they understood marriage, how they understood rearing of children. All of this is involved in that discussion of your ancestors' experience we call history.
Mm.
You know? And then we will find that thing we call spirituality will begin to grow as us when we realize the ancestors is us. And that's why Dessalines said, freedom or death, the only choice you have. If you choose your ancestors, you've chosen freedom. If you choose anything else, you've chosen death. I can't make it any plain, more simple. Now, Sister Tata, you know how much I love you. But if I don't go get me some breakfast and get me some hot chocolate or some tea, you know what I wanted to, though? I wanted to show some books, if that's okay, that I think would make for good reading. And you know, one of my favorite, this is always one of my favorite.
Mm-hmm. The African consciousness.
Yes, one of my favorite. But there's one that's written by Booker Hiawatha. And I never knew Booker to be a strong spirituality person. And we've known each other since we were in our 20s. But when I saw this book and I read this book,
Spirituality before religion.
or religion, Booker Hiawatha Khomeini.
So, by Professor Khomeini.
He got it right. Right? He got it right. It's
Wonderful.
Extraordinary book.
So where can we get it, Prof? You know, when you show like that, we're going to be ordering it.
Amazon,
or I'll be able to.
Almost all of them are on Amazon. If you Google them, you will find them.
All right.
And this one by Khumalo is the foundation of African thought. He wrote this some years ago. But this is an excellent book. Oops. Foundation of African Thought.
No, I didn't see that. Okay.
Okay.
Anyway, you make the screenshots of the books and send it to me, Prof.
One more I want to share on the screen because I want people to be running out to the stores today. This book you need to have before tomorrow morning. African Cosmology of the Bantu Congo.
The Bantu Congo.
By Babafuki Bunsaki. This piece is just the masterpiece. And then the one that you never want to forget, because this will open the way of those who are young and just young at getting into the system, as the Introduction to African Religion by Mbidi. John Mbidi. Mbidi's work is a masterpiece. Okay. And he has another one called Introduction to African Religion and Philosophy. So those are some good reading to start with.
Okay.
And to begin to listen to, and of course, Things Fall Apart by Chinweizu will really show you, not Chinweizu, I'm thinking about him because I need to call him today.
Chinua Achebe.
And he will show you the damage that colonialism did and how it did the damage and what you can do to undo the damage, how you can disengage and disconnect yourself from the matrix called colonialism. So it's important reading, studying the words of ancestors, the Cheikh Anta Diop's, the Dr. Ben, the Dr. Jeffries, the Dr. Hilliards, and my brother Chinweizu, who lives in Ghana now, and I keep missing him, but I'm there because I'm moving too fast. But history will erase the mystery. We are the greatest human experience to ever be on the earth. Every other group, whether they call themselves a racial group, cultural group, ethnic group, comes out of the Black woman. All right. That they have not, because of the ecological condition they found themselves in, been able to maintain the integrity of her universality is sad. But if we're going to put them in check, we must stop being them. If we must put the minority, they are the minority in the world, and they got us, the majority, in check. Yes, the Europeans is the smallest minority in the world. They're smaller than the Asians, they're smaller than the Africans. We are the majority in the world, and we got this little tiny minority ruling over us through our own ignorance, our fear, our lack of knowledge of self, our lack of knowledge of history, our lack of knowledge of ancestry. And if we can correct that by disengaging from their worldview and through study and learning, reestablish our ancestors' worldview, we will free ourselves. And this thing will never happen to us again.
Ashe.
Ashe, Sister Susan.
Thank you so much, Professor. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Susan.
Thank you too.
Wonderful day.
Thank you to everyone too. Oh, I'm so sorry. I mean, thank you to everyone. I mean, the message is clear and simple. And for those of us who could not, we would still rewatch and actually like put them into episodes where we can also, carry it along. A lot has been said, a lot has been heard, and of course, a lot has been shared too. I'm so thankful that you had the time to do this for yourself, to do this for yourself. Gone are those days where we used to think that, when we do something, we're doing it for Pan African Daily, or we're doing it for Susan, or for Annie, or we're doing it for Professor, or we're doing it for Motherland even. Now, every single thing we're doing, you're doing it for yourself. We're doing it for self. And I'm so thankful for this message that Professor James brought to us, because I've been going through it all, trying to micromanage all the studies that we've had here, the different lectures and the different points. And it was very obvious that there's something that we haven't done. And that's why we are still not getting the right lane. And this is it. I can assure you, we can look no further. This is our unity. This is our new beginning. This is the recreation. This is the rebirth. This is the Africa we want. This is the Pan-Africanism. This is the Ubuntu. It's everything, the knowledge of self and spirituality. You remember Professor Baena taught us, you go to all her playlists on Pan-African Daily TV or other platforms. This is the point she has been chewing on. I think it just needed his brother, Professor James, to get this download. And so that the two, when they meet together, like what she's coming out, very powerful. This is a guideline for us, the 7 principles of Voodoo. So you can imagine when you take all these other collections, you try to find yourself or figure it out for yourself, and then you put the rituals into it, like connecting back to the knowledge of your past self. Because exactly like what Prof was saying, your ancestors are you, is your past self. So you kind of like rekindle your memories, the things you used to do in that old version, in that past. Now they begin to come new back to you. That's why we renew. Even like those that are following Christianity, the renewal of the spirit. It's the same thing. We have to renew Ubuntu. We have to, what spirit now? You see, everything now that you want to do in that realm and this opposite side, it's just questioning, not because there was not a lot that was distorted. It's the wisdom, the knowledge that was taken from it is there. But there's just a change of small similar things. And those similarities, if you can balance them up, of course, now we know the other side. It was not totally wrong or bad, or we don't know about wrong or bad or anything. Any energy comes the way it is and it gets back what it brings. That's what I love with the ancestral knowledge and the energy. Anything you give, you just attract it back. It's as simple as that. And that's the judgment. That's the penalties you will pay. You have to leave it here. You're not leaving it anywhere. So imagine when you transform those energies. It's the same thing we start teaching how to reroute our energies, to redirect it to what we actually want. And all this knowledge of the ancestral knowledge and the African spiritual is teaching you, you can even define when you want to transcend, at what age. It all in you. It all depends on you. If you say you want to live 100, 150, or this and that, you're going to live that. But when you keep every day saying, oh, I don't even know, because you don't even know. You just imagine a whole you, yourself, your system being on the universe for how many you don't even know. At some point, at 50, even at 60, like they say, a fool at 40 is a fool forever. Like you don't even know. Like we're still searching every day. Normally, if we walk in the light, in the spirit, in the memory of our ancestors, the old version of you, you must know. You must know. And that's why we have to distinguish between spirituality and religion, and the faith in the belief of African spirituality. Everything is the same. But you only, when I teach it in my spirituality classes, you only need to just adjust. It's just a matter of adjusting. And before you know, you're already there. Because a lot of people really don't know how to put the knowledge into practice. That's the point. That's just the difference. Take your Bible, the knowledge is there. And look at yourself and where you come from and your culture and the things like Prof is saying and the history, and just replace it and just balance it. That's all. You can do anything. Why do even the Christians in the Bible say, you can do everything in my name, and you can do even greater things in my name? You will do even greater things. Just translate this sentence, this passage into your African spirituality and begin to understand the power that you have over everything. Depends on you. I'm grateful he made one critical thing. We have lost lives for years thinking that guns were going to be a solution through wars, through whatever. Never was, will never be. And that's why even our ancestors were not given the knowledge to make guns. We created guns to hunt our animals or to hunt other things or to chase the prey that were against us. It was never to use it in that kind of constellation. So because you are not of that, you cannot produce that. Your energy is not that. It will not. So I just want to thank you, and also to conclude, when I met Prof this evening, he was like, no, Dr. Tata, we cannot do even up to 1.5 hours. I said, okay, whatever the ancestors will lead us, let's just go. But we just hit it 3 hours in the new season of Pan-African Daily. We never even made 1.5 hours. So that is the rebirth. That is it. We could stay here the whole till morning. You will not even get tired. You will not even know. Because exactly that journey of getting back into yourself, into Sankofa, is it not what even in the Bible or in the churches they talk about being born again? It's the same thing. Being into your new consciousness now in your African spirituality, you're just being born again. And doing the rituals of connecting your old self through these rituals that Professor James is saying is the same thing like they tell you have to baptize yourself. And what are the elements? Water, candles. It's the same, just the difference. If you organize your thought, everything is fine. So I want to thank all of you. We're going to get in touch with this again. Probably I'll have to rerun these shows, but we have to do it into episodes so that we grab the point 1, the point 2, the point 3, the culture. How does culture work with spirituality? How I can begin my spirituality journey? Because right now, that's the freedom of the Africa that we want. That's the unity of the one Africa, because the time you finish getting into yourself, you just remember we are one. And so all this political statement, we were using our energy. Oh, we need to collapse the borders. We need to do the one passport. We need to have one financial system. We just need to go to Burkina Faso. We just need to go to any country of our choice and start growing that land and start feeding our people and start feeding ourselves and start reproducing and start recreating the 60% of untapped arable African land. Who is going to work it when we bury ourselves in the factories? Who? We're still strong. All of us are in our prime. We are all in our prime. And that's what Prof is just saying. The energy that we have. Have you ever looked at yourself and the kind of things you do in your melanated body? The energy that you have, and recreate that energy or multiply that energy or transcend that energy. I'm telling you, even at 100, that's what our ancestors lived longer. Even when they put it in the Bible, that Abraham lived for how many hundred of years? You can too. We can. So that's the power. And I'm so happy it's the time. Thank you, brother. You're saying it. Yes, yes. Reborn, renewal of the mind. Nothing difficult. Similarities, the tricks. You know something else. Why don't you learn something new? Those are things we have to question ourselves. Yes, I've been doing this all the time. Now, what if I just do something new? What is wrong in learning something new? What are you afraid of? You didn't die of the old. Imagine how you would even die of the new. You can only become just knowing both things. I know religion, for instance. I know the church. I know this one. Now I want to know this one. Imagine when you know this and you bring the knowledge together. So, what are we afraid of? What is it that is holding you not to learn something that you don't know? Because that's knowledge. And particularly when that knowledge is about you, it's about your ancestry, it's about yourself, it's for your good, it's for your abundance, it's for your benefit, it's for your wealth. Now, what stops me? If I've been looking and searching for solutions, then I got a solution that is even mine. Why will I be afraid? So that's the things that we need to fix. And nobody can help you fix this. Professor, or all the ones that are coming or bringing the light into the space, it's just a matter of direction. It's like a compass. It's like your navy, right? That is just saying, okay, you put this direction, Africa, you put this direction, African, and the history of my past. You take this one, the food, the cloth, the greetings, the language, and everything. And that navy, it just takes you there. So this is just like a compass to direct you. But now, if you want to follow the navy, it depends on you. If you put your navy and it says go left, and you say, no, I want to go right, that's now on you. And that's why you will not see us coming live again for things that are not relevant, because we just realize where the message that we've been given. And once you know it, can you hate one another? There's just no way, because you just understand it is the opposite of me. Like he said, Heru and Oset. It's the opposite in one, in opposite. How can you hate your left and hate your right? It's impossible. But because we were not living in that right mind, and we begin to look at one another, all this hate, all this cheating, all this scamming, all this, because we never had even just knew, I'm doing it to my sister. I'm doing it to my brother. I'm doing it to my neighbor. I'm doing it to my community. That one single thing that I do, it's spilled over to the community. And we always, in that past mind, did not blame the things you do. We blame the things that the outside give to you by the things you gave to the energy that gave it back to you. Period. Go through it. But if you need help, like I said, we're right here. We're right here. We are on track on the same thing. And we begin to divide. And even those that have not found it, we still observe and we look. And even us, we're still also following the steps of looking and teaching and learning. What herbs do we need to decolonize? We all have them. What food even? What food? This one is the craziest. What food you need to eat to decolonize? Because most often we're always thinking about the school that we have here always had to deal with knowledge or wisdom that somebody has to come and teach you. And then we have to read books and read it. There is food. There's the cleansing. There's the bathing. There's the libation. There's the herbs. Every single thing, what you eat. Here. Open your eyes, your everything. So we're quiet because we're happy, because we found a formula, because we found the solution, because we know the solution was not the kind of anger we used to exercise. No, we have to do this. Oh, we have to fight till we die. No, we don't have anything to fight. If there is one thing you have to fight right now, it's you. Just you. To find out who you are and the potentials that you have from your ancestry. Game over. And imagine once you free yourself, how much impact is the same thing once you are not free, the same impact goes around. So I want to thank you so much. We could stay here the whole night. Like I said, it's a Sunday night out here. Tomorrow is a Monday. A lot of you have to go to work. And that's why we said we have to do this production, because it was so timely. It is the message nobody would give to you. And that's what we've been rumbling around. And this message we have to start teaching. Culture and spirituality, that's my bread. Till after 200 years. Culture and spirituality. Nothing, you will not find me into it. You won't find me anywhere on camera on it. Even when you follow me on Facebook, on my post or whatever, these two elements will just tell you this is the new Annie Tata. Okay? Yeah. And my looks and my every single thing. When I'm wearing the golds from Akan that I keep getting from Ghana, all sort of pieces, is the gold from motherland, made and crafted in the neighborhoods of Accra. Raw gold. All right. So yes, my beloved, it's a beautiful day. It's a beautiful time. No time like this. If we meet ourselves in the space, we are all gone. So thank you so very much. I'll be connecting again. We would break these lectures. I don't know if we have to come live again tomorrow, but I think we want to leave this to digest into us, maybe a week, or we might come live on Friday or on weekend. So thank you, and go to work on yourself. And for those of you who know more and you've already made a step further, please teach us, because every journey is not the same and every energy is not the same too. So thank you and good night once more. Love you. Bye-bye. You are watching the Pan-African Daily TV with Dr. Susan Tata. The Africa we want. Unity, consciousness, our culture, our spirituality, our history. One Africa for Africans worldwide. Motherland's calling its diaspora home. Join my voice. Join my team. Join my campaign. Campaign 21 hashtag 1 million subscribers on the Pan-African Daily TV YouTube. Be a volunteer. Apply now. Be the new Africa.